All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Okay, share this out, share this out, share this out. It's Friday night, Law of One. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so Denise, welcome. If you guys don't say hi in the chat, I don't know you're here. I just see numbers, and that's it. Oh, let me take down this banner here, right? And you guys can see me. Let me put myself up in full screen here so you can see. Hold on here. There we go. Okay. Welcome. Okay. So it's a love one. It's Friday night. Let me go back to the chat over here so I can see what you guys are saying or pay attention. Rick, welcome. Okay. So it's Friday. It's the law of one. We're on session 56, question 15, I believe. Ashley, welcome. I think we're on question 16. 15 or 16. I don't think I backed up to 15. I think I started on 16, right where we left off last time. Actually, I think we left off on 17 or 18, and I backed up to 16. Okay, so what we were talking about, Raul was talking about, or Don was asking about the spiral energy, the Kundalini energy, though he wasn't using the word Kundalini. He was using the word spiral energy in the different chambers in the Giza Plateau Pyramid. So the question was posed about the pyramid, and I talked about that last week, that the pyramid itself is a literal pyramid, is a representation of your brain, actually from the skull, from the top of your bottom of your top teeth up to the crown chakra, and the brain stem and everything that is involved in that. So if you look at the Eye of Horus, not the Eye of Ra, the Eye of Horus, because everybody thinks it's called the Eye of Ra. It's not. It's the Eye of Horus. But if you look at that, that's actually your third eye connected to your pineal gland. That's the little thing that comes off the bottom, and then you have the hippocampus above it. So you have the eye itself, and it's turned sideways as if you're looking at your head here. And I posted about that online in my reels. You can go back. I think it was about a year ago now when I put all that up there about the overlapping of the pyramid, the overlapping of the Ark of the Covenant in your head as well. The same exact placement from your skull itself is Golgotha. Okay, that's the place of the crucifixion of Jesus, and this is the representation of the Kundalini energy going up. That's also the Santa Claus going up the claustrum, becoming the claws, the claustrum from Santa Claus, the claustrum, and the Kringle. His name was Chris Kringle. Christopher means the Christos, he who is the Christ. Kringle is an ancient Viking word that is the grommet hole in a sail that the rope goes through. Currently, that's what that means. And in the ancient world, it literally meant the hole in the ceiling, the chimney. Okay, so he who is Christ, who goes through the chimney, and what is the chimney in the brain but the claustrum? He becomes the claustrum when he is crucified and anointed of the oil of John and resurrected. So he dies and is resurrected, and he becomes the claws. And if you are doing the right thing, being good for goodness sake, better not shout, better not pout, better not cry. I'm telling you why, because Santa Claus is coming to town. He goes down the chimney and back up the chimney, and that's the oil that going up and down the claustrum, going up and down the kringle, and then he either leaves you coal or he leaves you a present. And the present is illumination. And if you eat of the tree of life in that time period, he leaves you coal. And in the brain, during that time of the holy oil, as it descends down your spine and ascends back up your spine again, if when it is in that 2.5 day period, that 3 day time period, when it's dormant, crucified in your brain, if you eat from the tree of life, sex, debauchery, alcohol, bad food, crap like that, not meditating, eating properly, not saving that oil, then you expend the oil, and what's released in your brain is a coal-like substance instead of the endorphins that are a euphoric effect from the illumination. You actually have this secretion of a black coal-like milky coal substance in your brain that actually lowers your vibration. Okay. So Raw is trying to explain that to Dawn. I don't know if Dawn was a believer in God or not, or if he was a atheist. I really don't know for sure, but he wasn't asking questions as if he were anything other than a physicist, a scientist who was an atheist. So Dawn doesn't actually talk about things pointing it at a spiritual way without saying it to Dawn. But Dawn doesn't fight against it and say God doesn't exist. So I don't think he was an atheist. I think he was just being a scientist and asking scientific questions, trying to, knowing that his information, when they published it in a book, was going to get out to the world in a time between 1981 and 1984 when they did this, that the academic community, which he was a part of at the time, was not going to take it well and not want to listen. So I think he was on purpose staying in the lane that he was in there at that point on purpose, because he was, sorry, my phone's blowing up over here. You guys can't hear it because I have it on silent, but my phone's ringing from a number I don't know, and people are texting me from a number that I don't know. Oh, it's actually my sister, who's supposed to know that I'm online right now, but she's oblivious. She's probably high. She smokes pot all day long. Okay. So Rick, hello. Denise, hello. Did I say hello to you guys? Who did I miss? Anybody? Reese, hello. I didn't see you in the chat there because I wasn't looking at that. I didn't have my glasses on. Okay. So you guys, you have to realize that the energy that we're talking about is the Kundalini energy, and that the pyramid itself, which most people in the academic community and scientific community today will not say that the pyramid has anything to do with anything. Everybody has their own theory, and nobody wants to believe that it's anything other than the Egyptian government in antiquities over there will tell you that it has nothing to do with any of that. It was built by a pharaoh, and it was his burial chamber, although there is no proof that there was anyone ever buried there or any artifacts. Never mind that now. Shut up, you're stupid if you think it was aliens. And then you have people that will fight against the thing, saying there is no correlation between the pyramid and Orion, just because the pyramidal complex just happens to be identical to Orion. And there seems to be 7 of those complexes around the world that are identical in shape and distance and orientation on the Earth, along with an entire complex of buildings that also represent other things. But never mind that. That can't be true. It's all bullshit. It's just all made up, because the pyramid has some physical function. And then they argue about that. Some say it was a water pump. Some say it was a microwave pump. Some say it was a generator for free energy. Some say it had nothing to do with any of that, and it was just there. And some say it was just decoration. And some say it's a paperweight. Okay. So, and then they all agree, well, we could never, because there is no definitive proof about anything, so we can't ever believe anything. Just because some people in the 80s supposedly talked to somebody that was supposedly not on Earth, and they supposedly said they built it. Just because that narrative is an alien doesn't mean that people didn't build it. And that's the beauty of this place. Depending on where you are in your development as a being yourself, you're going to be one of those belief systems, because that is where you are and will be in your development. So it is those things for all of those people, because it can't be anything other than that for that person in that developmental place in their existence. Okay. Just like the information that I speak, there are some people on the Earth that will just hear my words and go, guy's making it up, crazy. Okay, they say that about Carla, just making it up. But I point out to you the information that she said in 1981 to 1984, the science didn't prove, and oddly did prove, from 2012 till now. Okay, and historical empirical fact, she mentioned, ergo, the Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon Triangle, that in 1981 she claimed, because Ra channeled it, that there was a pyramid under the water down on the ground that was still active in the Bermuda Triangle. And there was a pyramid down on the ground underwater in the Japanese Triangle, because 12,000 years ago, the sea level was so much lower that those were above sea level, and they were built by people between 1981 and 1984, and up until 2016, 2012 and 2016 respectively, everybody said that she just made it up. And then in 2012, they found the one over there in the Dragon Triangle and swam down there with scuba gear and cameras and filmed it and published it for the world. Then they said, I wonder, don't know where they got this idea from, but I wonder if there's a pyramidal complex over in the Bermuda Triangle as well, since we found one over here, not giving any credit to the fact that Carla and in the Law of One were the ones who said that. Never mind that now. We just got this idea, right? It came out of nowhere that we should swim down over there off the coast of Japan to see what's down there. And when we did, we found a pyramidal complex. So naturally, because we found that one, that we should look around the world to any other place where there's strange happenings going on. It just so happens the Bermuda Triangle, maybe we should swim down there. So in 2016, they did. Never gave credit to Carla Rutger or anybody in the LL research group for giving them that idea. But then they went down and they swam down there and they took pictures of it and filmed it, and I saw those. And so you can look those up. So when Carla made shit up, she got the luckiest on the face of the earth and should have played the lottery, because she predicted exactly the spot where two pyramidal complexes were under the water because the sea level rose on the face of the earth in places where weird phenomenon and anomalies happen. Oh, and by the way, Ross said the reason that things happen there is because at certain times when the energy hits just right for the right day, month, hour of the year on the earth, the portals that there are stargates turn on under the water. And if a ship or submarine or aircraft happens to be within a certain height of that portal, they'll go through the portal to a different place and disappear off the face of the earth without a trace. Weirdly, that's exactly what goes on in the Dragon Triangle out in the Pacific and the Bermuda Triangle out in the Atlantic. And that Carla said that, and they said, made it up, lying, just trying to sell books. And then 40 years later, guess what happened? They discovered that, and they haven't seen it turn on, but they're like, well, maybe there's something to that, and there's a weird energy that happens from those pyramids down there that has made all the ships and planes disappear. And then people in the academic world goes, pshaw, you're just making that up. Again, they fall back to, not because some of them now there's empirical evidence, but there's no empirical evidence because somebody hasn't survived the portal opening up and going, I watched a ship disappear from this big giant vortex that opened up, and the ship just floated into it and they just went through it. And oddly, it looks like the old TV series from the 90s, Stargate and Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe, that had Stargates in them, hence the name of the shows, and that oddly looked like a Stargate. And then you have people here in the United States in the Four Corners and the Hopis saying, here's this rock where there looks like a door has been carved into it. And way back in time, there was people who would go over to this and touch in the center of the door where this cutout is with this certain gem that they had around their neck. And it would open up this weirdly, oddly portal that they would step through and go to a different world. And no one can open it anymore because the last guy who went through took the key with him. Yet Native Americans still go there and have a ritual and do all this stuff, but there is no empirical evidence. And they just made it up, and it's just a rock formation that they must have carved out for some reason. And weirdly, this was just on the internet about 3 days ago. They've found about 10 more of those around the world that are oddly exactly the same shape, in the exact kind of same stone, with the exact same kind of folklore from the people who lived in countries at a time when apparently they never talked to one another because they were just a bunch of skin-wearing cavemen who didn't travel anywhere yet. They built the exact same, called it a portal, doorway to another world that these shamans were able to use and go through. But at a certain time in the past, all of these shamans, weirdly, it was around the exact same year, all decided to leave the earth and they never returned. But they said that one day they would. And they all left at the exact same time. Bizarre that that all happened all around the world to a bunch of people who never communicated with each other. And that all of these similarities happened exactly the way it was described, but nobody's ever seen the door open. So therefore, because there wasn't somebody standing there with a cell phone recording it, and even if they did today, they would call it a deep fake. So it doesn't matter. It's like if Jesus came back today, they would crucify him again or lock him up, and he'd be locked in a dungeon in the United States, wherever he showed up, whatever country he showed up in. They'd lock him in a dungeon, and they would say he was some crazy guy and put him in a drug-induced coma until they gave him COVID and let him die. Okay, let's continue here. Right? Sorry if you guys are asking questions. I haven't been reading the chat at all. So let's go ahead and do a sound check. You guys tell me if you can hear raw. We'll get us started, and I'll check what you guys were saying if you were talking to me or amongst yourselves in the chat. Okay, so let me press play here and tag people, get them in here. Where is everybody who's normally here on a Friday? They all just not showing up. I mean, that's okay. Nobody's required to, but Lord have mercy. All right, let's continue here, okay? Or let's start. You guys tell me if the sound works for you.
59.16 questioner. Then the third spiral radiating from the top of the pyramid you say is used for energizing. Can you tell me what you mean by energizing? Ra. I am Ra. The third spiral is extremely full of the positive effects of directed prana, and that which is placed over such a shape will receive shocks energizing the electromagnetic fields. This can be most stimulating in third density applications of mental and bodily configurations. However, if allowed to be in place over long, such shocks may traumatize the entity. 59.17 questioner. Are there any other effects of the pyramid shape beside the spirals that we have just discussed? Ra. I am Ra. There are several. However, their uses are limited. The use of the resonating chamber position is one which challenges the ability of an adept to face the self. This is one type of mental test which may be used. It is powerful and quite dangerous. The outer shell of the pyramid shape contains small vortices of light energy which, in the hands of capable crystallized beings, are useful for various subtle workings upon the healing of invisible bodies affecting the physical body. Other of these places are those wherein perfect sleep may be obtained and age reversed. These characteristics are not important. 59.18 questioner. What position would be the age reversal position? Ra. I am Ra. Approximately 5 to 10 degrees above and below the Queen's Chamber position in ovoid shapes on each face of the four-sided pyramid, extending into the solid shape approximately 1/4 of the way to the Queen's Chamber position. 59.19 questioner.
Right. Okay. So that's a good question. Denise says, how's it dangerous? I think you're talking to me about what you're hearing. Thank you for letting me know that there's sound is good. So if you're in the pyramid and you're not in alignment, now remember the pyramid and in the pyramidal complex, if you look at it, the way it lines up, it is the brain stem, right? So if you're going in there and you're trying to utilize the energy for certain things, you have to be in the right positions in there, because you're becoming the oil, the Christ oil. You're physically going through the exact way, but you can't just go straight up the chimney. So they have staircases, and they have things slightly off a little bit because of where everything is located in your brain. But you can't just go straight up in the air and float up there. So they have to have chambers and staircases that get to from one place to the other. Otherwise, you'd be able just to float up if you could fly, but you can't. So you can't do that like the oil does in your brain. So if you're trying to utilize the energy and you say get out of position, and then you try to use that energy, that's the wrong place for the activation of your Kundalini energy in your body that you're trying to do in there. So it becomes dangerous to move to different places in there than the stations that you're supposed to go to from one place to the other for obvious reasons, because you're out of alignment with the energy that is being focused specifically in specific places. And that's why he's saying 5 degrees above and 5 degrees below, because it's a bubble energy that you have that is focal point in the center of that room if you're standing there as a human, so that it activates your heart or your crown chakra, right, or your third eye chakra. One of those, depending on where you're aligning. So it's only dangerous if you're there spending too much time in the wrong places and you're trying to utilize the energy. If you don't know what's going on, it's not dangerous to you because you don't know what's going on, and you're not going to be hanging out on a staircase for a few hours just sitting down with nothing to do on a staircase. If you're taking a tour of the pyramid, they're not going to let you do that. They're going to go, you got to move along with the stay with the group people. And so it's not like you're going to be sitting there camping out. I'm going to hide, and they're oh, I don't know, we've lost somebody somewhere in the pyramid. Oh, he'll turn up, so we'll just leave him in there. It's not what they do, right? When you're with a group of people, if they're going down the staircase, they have people at the top of the staircase making sure everybody gets in the stairs and goes down, and making sure that people don't just topple over and kill everybody falling down the staircase. Nobody gets left behind. Nobody gets to hide. It's not a movie where you can look around and the tour guide's oblivious and you can sneak off and go to an area that's got a rope or a chain and go under it and run around in the pyramid, and all of a sudden touch something and the wall comes down, and now you got to solve the puzzle of how to get out, and you got an hour and a half to do so because that's when the credits roll and the movie's over, and you got to move along. So then you do something that is completely wouldn't happen in real life, like, oh, I can now climb up to a 5,000-year-old statue and use my legs to make the statue that weighs a ton fall over, because I can push a ton of weight with my legs if I have one hand on the wall to do so, like in Indiana Jones, to crash through the wall and ride this thing down and not get hurt when it breaks through the wall, and not get hit by flying debris or rock that comes down that's been standing there. Big blocks of pyramidal stone that weigh 5 tons are all of a sudden a wall this thick now only, and you crash through it and go through to the other side where there's like 10 billion snakes who none of them get scared and bite you when you land, and you can just jump back up and swing fire at them and they'll all move out of the way for you, and nobody will try to bite you at all, except for when you fall down and you look up and there's a cobra that strikes at you, and if you actually pause the scene, you can tell there's plexiglass between him and the cobra, because you can see the reflection off of the fire that's sitting there to protect him. I saw that live in the movies and went, he's behind the plexiglass, and people around me were like, shut up. I'm like, if they're gonna fake it and make it you think, you got to erase the fucking the glare from the fire in front of them so I don't see the reflection. They didn't do that, but it was only on the screen for like a second or two, and 99% of the population never noticed it until I tell them that, and then they pause it and go frame by frame and go, look at that, he's behind plexiglass. Same people who told me to shut up during the movie, right? So yeah, so it's only dangerous, Denise, and I know you got my point, but I'm just going to answer that. It's only dangerous. The energy, Rick, is what they're talking about, being out of alignment in the pyramid when you're moving between the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, other way around, strike that, reverse it. And he's saying, well, what if I wanted to, use the energy for something else, and it would be dangerous to try it in this other position, is what he was talking about there. So yeah, Jacob's ladder, right? Yes, Denise. Jacob's ladder is the exact same thing. I like that you're making the if you look up in the Bible, how many steps are on Jacob's ladder? 33 runs to Jacob's ladder. And what is it that the Jacob's ladder represents? Climbing up into the ascension into heaven, the illumination of heaven. That is literally, Jacob's ladder is you physically going on the journey, climbing up the 33 runs. You are reenacting the Christ, the Christos, the Christ oil that was born in Bethlehem, which is the lower vertebrae of your spinal column, the 7 fused ones at the bottom. Okay, when the oil goes down there, and then the oil mixes together and comes back up your spine, 33 vertebrae in your spine, and goes back into your head. So Jacob's ladder is another version of that story, explaining the Christ within and the ascension, okay, and the illumination, and you becoming the Christ oil and taking the journey to become the light of the world, the illumination. So it's the exact same. It's the exact same. It's just an analogy, or what's the word that I'm looking for here? Oh, I can't think of the word that I'm looking for right now. It's just another version of the story, an allegory of the same story. So the Santa Claus story is the same allegory as the Jesus story in the Viking pantheon. The Thor descending to heaven, becoming mortal, not being able to lift up Mjolnir. Thor means thunder. Mjolnir means lightning. Not being able to crack the sky and drive away the darkness, Fenrir the wolf from the sky. He uses his hammer of lightning and throws it at the sky, or uses lightning from the hammer to illuminate the sky and scare off Fenrir the wolf, which is darkness, which is the veiling, and then is now able to ascend back to heaven and stop Ragnarok and stop Surtur from the destroyer of worlds from destroying Asgard, and he becomes the light of the world and illuminates Asgard and brings the human race with him on his journey to illuminate them as to what's going on. And they go up the Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, which is the connection between the heart and the crown chakra. Okay, and it is exactly the spiral of the Fibonacci sequence, the 369, which goes from the heart to here. So instead of going straight up your spine, some people jump over that because of the wisdom, and they don't have to go completely straight up, and that's going up over Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. And why is it a rainbow? And why is it called Bifrost? And you need to look into that. But that has to do with living in the North and knowing that religion. Okay. So, Joanna, welcome. So you have to realize that all of those stories are the same story. And there's so many more. That's why Joseph Campbell wrote the book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he was showing you how in history, in mythology, the reoccurrence of the same story of an individual going on the same vision quest of the Savior and becoming the Savior yourself, and how that calls to you, in showing how in history that it was happening over and over again. You have Hercules, and that's why we have Herculean effort, where Hercules had to do all these things, and he was half man, half God, but he was only a half breed, and the gods didn't see him as full God, and he had to prove himself. And then you had what's his name during Troy? You had Achilles during Troy, and then you had the king, not Agamemnon, but the one who recruited Achilles. And that was what the Iliad was written, and that was his journey after just trying to get back to Greece, which was just across the ocean, right? From where we now know that Troy was. All he had to do is sail across the bay, and he was back in Greece. And it took him like 20 years to get back because he got sidetracked. Chances are that it didn't actually happen, and it didn't take 20 years. He got sidetracked, and he had all of these quests that he had to do. And if you look at the quests, including fighting Medusa, who was Medusa? Medusa was the feminine energy that had the snake energy, that if you looked at her, she turned you to stone. So he had to defeat her by going within her realm and not looking directly at her and looking only at her reflection and tricking her and being able to, it's another parable to the same story of the ascension and sacrificing yourself for your men. Jason and the Argonauts was another one, the same story. What did he fight against? He fought against the giant that had one eye, oddly right directly where the third eye was. And he had to what? He had to trick that giant. He had to outthink the giant. Other things that happened where they had to fight these giant things and scorpions and skeletons, the undead. All of that was the dying, the death, and the resurrection, and going through the rising of the oil again to the ascension and the illumination, and it's the same story. So this is the scenario that the pyramid was created for those people in Egypt at the time, 12,000 years ago. Sorry, I'm reading what Rick said. He says, "Oh no, I joke around a lot, Leonard, but I've been, what is the word you're trying to say here? Oddly, is that what you're supposed to be saying there? Arretedly thinking about asking you if I can become your understudy. Well, no, I'll help anybody that wants me to help guide them, Rick. You don't have to ask, or well, I mean, I guess you do for me to know it, right? But if you want me to work with you to help you in any way, absolutely, yes. We'll just start setting aside some time for us to talk, and I can help to guide you into you learning your own path because you will. You'll only need me for so long if I do my job right. Right? If I do my job right, you'll only need me for so long. So yeah, I would love to. I don't chase after anybody. I wait for them to ask me or start talking to me, and people think that I'm unapproachable. But ask anybody that I've worked with, I'm not. I'll answer any questions that you pose to me in a chat, and if we have time, we can set up a time where we can, talk either live on audio or audio video. So yeah, Rick, no, I don't have a problem with that. Just start thinking of questions that you want to ask me or what you want to talk about. Let me know. We'll start the dialogue and we'll go from there, brother. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to do that and to assist. I've been doing this for most of my life. For the last 35 years, almost 40 years of my life now, I've been doing that exact thing, guiding people and helping people on their ascension path. I'm working with people behind the scenes now. I mean, not literally right this second because I'm on the air, but you know what I mean. We could do it. Denise is asking the question. Let me put it up on the screen. Could we do it like a Zoom where we could all listen in? We could do it on, we don't have to do Zoom, but we could because I fired Zoom. But I can do up to 10 people in StreamYard. I'm not saying we'll do it right now because it's a Friday but you know what I mean? I'm supposed to be doing the law of one. But we can set that up, guys, to where we can all be on there. Because I can have you guys all on there and then we can all talk just like a Zoom panel. I can do the same thing here, but I think I can only do up to 10 people. So if we need to do more than that, then we can do like a 45-minute segment because I can do that for free on Zoom because I fired them because I was paying them like $160 a year and I wasn't using their platform, and I'm paying StreamYard like $130 or $140 a year for this platform. So I decided to get rid of Zoom because I'm using this one. So we can do that, and we can get everybody in, and we don't have to film it. We don't have to be live. I can just open a studio, invite everybody in, and that's not live, and I won't even record it unless people want me to, and we can just all talk, and I can work with anybody that wants me to work with them. I would prefer that. And then if we want to do that to where we start doing that live for people to see, I will at some point want to get to do that as well. I prefer doing that setting than this one, but this is the one that attracts people for the knowledge, but I would prefer to set something up like that. So Denise, thank you for asking that, because I would definitely like to do that. That's why I was doing it before when we were doing that with Jacqueline. The problem is that we had a certain person who showed up and decided to mute everybody's microphone and take over and decide that that he was going to do all the talking, and nobody could have any other say unless he was talking to you or asking you a question. And that's just not the way things should work. Now, I get if everybody's trying to talk at once, we start, telling people, let's mute our microphones, but I leave that up to you guys to mute yourself. And then when you want to talk, unmute yourself. And I'll only force people to be muted if people start talking over each other and they get rude. Then I'll go, okay, look, I got to have to mute you guys so you talk one at a time. He didn't even do that. He just did it. You know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to hang out with this where I'm sitting here for 2-3 hours just staring and I don't get to in any way be a part of this. And that was annoying to other people that were there. Almost everybody that I talked to who was in there that day, I think you were, Denise, we're just like, what was that about? He was literally talking to his own people and refused to talk to anybody. Just saying. Okay. So yeah, guys, definitely we'll off camera. Peter, welcome, brother. I would love to have Peter there too. We'll have to set something up where we can have Peter there as well. So I would definitely want to do that. This is what I do. And then I can answer your guys' questions that you guys have. I've been wanting to say, just so you know, I've been wanting to say, okay, we're not going to do the law of one anymore. And I want you guys to start thinking about questions because you guys have a week to come up with some questions that you want to ask me. And we're going to go on the air and do that. But I didn't want to put anybody on the spot So I would love to do that off, off the air, where if you guys can be in a safe place and talk, and we can do that. So let's, after the show tonight or tomorrow, I'll try and do it tonight after, while dinner's going. I can be, texting you guys in the chat. We can figure out a day and a time that's conducive to everybody, because I can do it any day, anytime, right? As long as I have time to run away if I have to take my mom into the shower every couple of hours. You know what I mean? But yes, I would love to do that, because this is what I want to do. The next phase of what we're doing is going to be getting into more me doing that, working with other people as well. And other people like me doing that, working with us to be able to answer your guys' questions in a setting. And that's why I said I would love to have Peter there, because if you guys could some of you may have never heard Peter speak, so you don't know what kind of advice this man can give you, because he hasn't been live with us very often. But those of you who can go back in time to the shows that we've had Peter on, he gets more listeners than I do when he talks, because of what Peter has to say. So I would love to start doing that and get Peter involved in some sort of thing doing that as well, to where he can actually talk and give you guys some advice, because you see him do it in the chat where he posts stuff, but that's stuff that he puts together and makes videos. And just like me, when I do my reels, it's different when we're trying to generalize those reels for you guys across the board, or when you're asking us specific questions and we're able to specifically answer you on your questions. So Peter Coyle would be a person I would love to do that. And so, yeah, officially, let's talk after the show today, guys, in the Law of One chat, and we'll set up a date. Maybe in the next, in the next few days, or by next week, whatever we can do, and we'll do just that. And I can work with you guys, because I know, Rick, I've been dying to work with you, but I've been waiting for you to be ready for that. So thank you and I'm honored that you asked if I could, if you could apprentice to me, because I would love to help you on your path of ascension, and get you moving the way that you feel that you can and should. So, and you guys know, like Denise, Penny, if she's still here, you guys know that when you ask me questions, I take the time and I'll answer, and sometimes more than you ever thought you were going to get. You can ask Stephanie, who's not here right now, but in the chat, she'll text me a few things. The next thing you know, I'm giving her 5 and 6 voice clips like Peter does. And she has to take 20, 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes to listen to everything that I said before she will say something else, because I just talked on the way I do. But if we're live and in an interface, it's not, you know what I mean? You can get questions in, even though I talk like I do. You know what I mean? The reason I do that this way is I'm trying to give you as much information as I can, which means I talk faster than I will on a one-on-one setting, unless the universe is telling me to hurry up. Like if you ask Cassie, she'll tell you, but the universe was saying you're not giving your information fast enough. And I was talking faster than I am right now. You can ask Cassie about that. She'll laugh when you do. She's not here, she would be laughing about that. Yes, let me do that. I didn't know that Joanne wasn't in there. So sorry, guys. Denise just asked me if I can add Joanne Lewis to the chat. I didn't know that she was not in the chat already. So let me go over to the Law of One chat and find out. And I don't know if I'm friends with her, but if I am, I can add her. If I'm not, I may not be able to add her. So let me find out right here this second. I think we're friends though, right? Let me see. Let me check I'm not seeing her there, but I'll double check it here and we'll see. Okay. Let me find out if I find you here. If we're not friends, Joanne, please send me a friend's request, and then I can add you easier than otherwise. I thought we were friends, so let me see here again. Let me double check the spelling. I didn't do a capital J on your name here, and sometimes it's specific. Sometimes it's specific. Yeah, I see. I think it's the picture that you're using now. It says Joanne Lewis, Joanne's Angels and Inspires. So I don't know if that is the same uh, uh, profile that you're on right now, Joanne. So I'll send it there. But if it is a different, I'll send that and we'll see. And if there is a different profile, because it's the same picture that you have, I just added you to the chat. So let me ping you in the chat if it is that one. If it's not, then you'll have to. Let me find you here. Okay, so I pinged you in the Law of One chat under that name with the same picture that you have right now currently. So if that's you, you're now added to the Law of One chat class. Okay, class chat. So it should pop up on your messenger chats right now. There should be a because I tagged you, so you should have a tag in there that that shows that you're in there. Yeah, you just I can see that you saw it, so you're in there. So what we'll do is we'll everybody who wants to be a part of having a session to where we're all in a small session one-on-one, or one me on whatever you know what I mean, to where we're not live on the air where people aren't paying attention, and then we can do a Q&A and I can talk to you guys, and we can do this on a regular. I would love to do that. That's what we're starting to do with Jacqueline every Saturday, but it was supposed to be everybody can talk and ask questions, and it turned into a one-man show. So the rest, a bunch of us said, I'm done with this. And we stopped going to that, because why would I go and sit in a setting to where I'm going to be sitting there for 2 or 3 hours and never get to ask a question? Right? Why would I subject myself to that? Just sit around and wait and go, ooh, pick me, so I can say something. Right? Why would anyone do that? Right? I mean, I can see if you're paying money and you're going to an auditorium and you have to get in a line, but that's still a line of people. That's why I did like Zoom, because you can raise your hand, but you can do the same thing in the setting if we're doing it on StreamYard. You know what I mean? You can't raise your hand, but you can literally say, I have a question. So, and then I can say, well, I'll go like this, like the psychics do, like when we're live, and we'll say, we'll talk to this person, then this person, then this person, then this person. We can set that up. Okay. So let's definitely do that, right? Right. Well, I don't think we're going to do it today, Peter, because Peter said I should be home about half 3 in the morning. I don't think we're going to do it today afterwards, because when I get done here, my vocal cords will be messed up. But we'll discuss in the chat what day we'll do it. And I know that if I'm going to do it, I'll probably do it at a time. I'll talk to you, Peter, and find out when you're home, because I know you're home late, like you said, like at 3:30. But if we can, I'll do it earlier in the day. I could do it at noon my time, which is 8 p.m. for those of you in the UK time. But then that's a little early for Rick, so that's why I do it here at 3, because it's like 8 in the morning for him. And right now, I don't know what time it is for you. It's 8 hours from me. So what is that? I'm at 4:15, right? 3:15. So right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're what? Have almost 10, almost 11 over there in the UK right now. So I think that's where you're at, Peter. So if that's the case, we can do that. If you can be here, I could still do it at 3 p.m. So it's not too early for Rick, but it'll have to be like on a Saturday, I think, for Rick, because he works. So Rick, we'll figure out your schedule of when you work and Peter's schedule, and we'll try to get it settled somewhere. And maybe we'll have to do a couple of different days to do that. We'll figure that out. Okay. Yeah. So you're at 8:15 a.m. right? Right now, is that where you're at? Are you 8:15? Because I'm at 3:45. So am I like 16 and a half hours ahead of you or behind you? It's possible, depending on where you are on your continent, right? But we'll figure it out either way. Okay. I don't think I have a nickname, Penny. Penny says, I feel jealous because everybody has a cool nickname. I don't have one, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys call me something that you don't tell me about. Right? So I'm sure that I have a nickname that I'm unaware of. Right? Because I don't know, but yeah, I mean that's just like in the chat for Ancient Aliens Worldwide. The chat they have me as Papa Smurf. At least the last I looked, I was Papa Smurf. Right? So yeah. Commander Leo, is that what you guys call me? I didn't know that. If you did, right? That's funny. Amanda, welcome. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, in case you're in a completely different time zone than me. Right, that's why I always say, Amanda, the beginning of my show, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. Because wherever you are is going to be a different time zone. I'm in California and it's afternoon for me. It's almost 4 p.m. So I'm in the United States in California, in the West Coast time. But Rick, I know, is in Australia, and so it's in the morning for him right now. It's Saturday morning for him, right? Peter, it's Saturday night. Peter and if Pamela were here, they're both in Ireland in the UK time, so they're 8 hours ahead of me, right? I'm the one that's way in the back. Master Leo, right? That's funny. No, I wouldn't. I don't. Well, I mean, I am a master. Honestly, I am a Reiki master teacher, so I could use that title. I'm also a Merlin. I could use that title. I'm also a minister. I could use that title. So I have these. I have titles. I've been given the title by the Council of Alien Expert. I've been given the title of the Melchizedek. I could use that title, but I don't. I don't use the Alien Expert either. Ray, who's not here, the Oracle, one of the Oracles, she calls me the history book because of how much that I know. I research every planet before I go to it, and I know stuff on world, off world, and around this sector of the universe. So because of that, she knows more and can tap into more, which is weird because she's an Oracle. She can tap into like where you came from and what you were before you were human and how many lives you had on what planets. I could do that, but that takes a lot of energy. So I don't normally do that, right? Yeah, Papa Smurf, right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, right. I mean, truly, Papa Smurf's character and my personality are very similar. Isn't that funny? So and well, I used to be called Colonel O'Neill because of the rank that I had, and because of Stargate SG-1, the character from the movie Stargate and the character in the television series Stargate SG-1 was a colonel in the Air Force, and his last name was O'Neill. His name was Jack O'Neill. So all my friends started calling me because his character in the television show and the movie was a lot like my character in real life, like I am. We have the same kind of attitude. So because of that, all my friends who were watching that way back in the 90s used to just call me Colonel O'Neill. And they were like, "Oh my God, you're just like Colonel O'Neill." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. I'm antagonistic, and I don't buy into anybody's. I don't see people and go, oh, that's a god. Oh no, ooh. I look at them and go, yeah, so what? Right? I had a conversation with Odin that got really heated. I mean, literally, smoke in the air heated at one point because I pissed him off. Right? And even then, it was kind of scary, but even then, I didn't look at him like he was superior to me in any way. I was defiant. And in fact, his wife had to step in and go, you need to calm down. He's getting really mad. I'm like, what's he going to do? He can't destroy my immortal soul. I'm not afraid of him. And she was like, that enrages him. I'm like, well, then he should stop being a pussy and stop getting mad with ego when I say I'm not afraid of him, because I'm not supposed to be afraid of him. And I don't care if he thinks I'm afraid of him. And I don't care if he's mad at me. And she was like, oh, you need to stop because there's going to be a lot of that. I'm like, so what? What's he going to do? Right? And so she was like, oh my God, you're just like Thor. No wonder you and Thor get along. So, and I was friends with Thor before I met Odin. Right? So now I see why. Annoying to daddy. That's why I get Ashtar in an uproar because I always give him squat. But he gives it right back because he's Ashtar. Right? Sorry, guys. Okay, let's continue with the law of one because there'll probably be some people here that don't want to hear from me. They're coming in going, isn't this supposed to be about the law of one? How come this guy's talking like all of a sudden he's a know-it-all or something? My ego's just really bruised, pal. I'm going to get annoyed with you because you're not talking about the things that I want you to talk about. If you want to listen to the law of one or read it on your own, you can. I'm here to interpret it and help you understand it. Okay, let's continue.
In other words, If I went just inside the wall of the pyramid a quarter of the way but still remained 3/4 of the way from the center and approximately the level above the base of the Queen's chamber, I would find that position. Ra. I am Ra. This is approximately so. You must picture the double teardrop extending in both the plane of the pyramid face and in half towards the Queen's chamber extending above and below it. You may see this as the position where the light has been scooped into the spiral and then is expanding again. This position is what you may call a prana vacuum. 59.20 Questioner. Why would this reverse aging? Ra. I am Ra. Aging is a function of the effects of various electromagnetic fields upon the electromagnetic fields of the mind/body/spirit complex. In this position there is no input or disturbance of the fields, nor is any activity within the electromagnetic field complex of the mind/body/spirit complex allowed full sway. The vacuum sucks any such disturbance away. Thus the entity feels nothing and is suspended. 59.21 Questioner.
Okay, before we get to that, right? And Joanne said, you just reminded me that I have tapped into people's Akashic records before now. Wait, sorry. That for some reason is okay. So a lot of people do that. I've talked about that before because when people do that and if they don't realize that they're tapping into someone else's Akashic record, they think they are that person. And the reason that, and I try to tell everybody that the reason that happens, the first thing you do, let's stop and go back. The first thing that you can tap into is your own records. That comes in the guise of you realizing other personalities that you were in a different lifetime. Okay. The first progression of that knowledge is whatever sex you are in this lifetime, you will first see the comfort of lives that you were the same sex so that it doesn't confuse you right away. Once you expand your consciousness to those memories of, wow, I was this person in a past life, and that expands your consciousness, then you will get, like I'm a man, so the first 3 lives that I saw in the awakening here was male. And then once I realized that was what was happening, then I saw females. And then you can tap into, then you start going to the Akashic records, the halls of Amente. Start going there. And then the first thing that you do is remember that you were someplace very important, and you start to realize it was some hall of records, and you were sitting with someone or many people and having this very intense conversation about some very important stuff. But you don't have the memory of it when you wake up. You lose the memory of it after you wake up fully into this body. You go, crap, now it's gone. Why? That drives me crazy. And that will happen until you start expanding your consciousness further. Then you'll start to get to remember what you talked about, but only that you talked about specific things and you not get the conversations if you're not supposed to know it once you're here, till that part of the veiling disappears. Then you start being able to tap into the Akashic records when you want to about yourself and your higher self. Once you expand past that, even if those things happen and no one's telling you that that's what's happening, then because what you don't realize is that when you tap into a memory, it's recorded as now, first person, as I am. Okay? So you have to be specific when you're trying to tap into a memory that you want to see it from the third person perspective, because if you don't, you see it as if it's you. So people will tap into, say, Holy Mary, and they're like, I was Holy Mary. And I'm like, well, there's a good possibility that you weren't, but because you tapped into her memory, you see it as if it's you, because that's how it's recorded from this perspective of being in an avatar. Taste, smell, touch, feeling, emotion, all of that, everything is recorded. So when you tap into it from the Akashic records, you become that person in that memory. It's like being in a dream. That's why we teach people about dream walking and how you go through the progression of figuring out that it's a dream, but staying in the dream and figuring out what the dream was about or is about. So you have to expand your consciousness past the oh wow, I was Jesus. Oh wow, I was Holy Mary. Oh wow, I was King Arthur. Because it is just as possible that you were not as it is that you were. Because when you tap into the Akashic record, if that's what you're tapping into, and you're tapping into the first ones you can get a hold of, it's always first person, right? So to know, Paulie, welcome, Cassie, welcome, to know that you're doing these things, then you say, is that me? Was I really that person, or am I tapping into their Akashic record? And that's when you find out if you really were, say, King Arthur, or a pharaoh, or Holy Mary, or whatever. Because it is only the first person that you're tapping into, right? So to know that you're able to tap into other people's Akashic records, like Joanne said, is very good, because you realize I'm tapping into other people's Akashic record. So you're expanded, your consciousness is expanded to a place where you recognize that's not me, I'm actually tapping into somebody else's. So you're seeing who it's attached to, as opposed to just tapping into it. So you are consciously aware that you're tapping into other people's Akashic records. It's there for everyone to tap into. And you can only tap into them if you're in service to others, because the information that you can gain from that, you could use to your advantage if you're in service to self, if you're evil. So you don't get that information. That's why they'll tell you, empirically, there's no proof that that even happens, and it's not real, and you're just making it up. It's a delusion in your head, because they can't do it. They cannot do it. Okay, because they can't ascend to that place to do it. So I like that you know that you're tapping into other people's Akashic record, because that shows that you're advanced enough to realize that that's not me. I'm not that person, but I know that it's attached to somebody else, and I know that I'm doing that, and that's okay, because you obviously wouldn't use that for your advantage to get something over on them, or you wouldn't have the ability to do it. So that's cool that you're doing that. Okay. So for those of you who just got here, because Cassie just got here and a couple other people just got here, Paulie just got here. Earlier we were discussing, because Rick asked if I could work with him to help him with his ascension and learning. And I said yes. And then I think it was Denise that said, could we do like a Zoom setting to where we could all sit in and even interact? And I said yes, because this is what I've been wanting to do. And we were starting to do that now almost a year ago with Jacqueline Taylor, and that kind of didn't work out, and we ended up leaving there. Speaking of which, I'm working with Jacqueline Taylor. I should do a commercial. I haven't done any commercials yet. We're working with Jacqueline Taylor, putting together for the solstice coming up in December. I think we're doing it the 30th, 29th and 30th of December. Let me look at my phone, because I have it on my phone. She's putting together a thing where we're going to be speaking for a couple of days, like 3 hours a day for 2 days. And I'm going to work with her. I am working with her, and it's I don't have it pulled up over here, but it's actually a global ambassador thing that she does every year. And it's going to be the Universal Peace Summit on December 29th and December 30th, 2024. And we're putting that together. So I am going to be looking at getting a few people that might want to speak on one of those 2 days. And we're not going to have people speak for like a full hour, because we're only going to be on for about 3 hours each day. So we're going to have people speak for 15 or 20 minutes. And then we'll do like have a bunch of people speak, and then have a panel where everybody can talk, and then have people ask questions in between everybody talking. And that we're putting that together. Her and I were just working on that again today. And I think I posted it, and she posted it in the chat last week. So it's something that we're putting together to talk about stuff. So if anybody's out there listening that might be interested in speaking for 20 minutes or so, or maybe doing a panel discussion at some point in one of those 2 days, it's going to be noon West Coast America time to 3 or 3:30 West Coast America time. I don't have the time listed here on this, but we were just discussing it today. Yeah, it's not listed there, but she today just said it's going to be noon West Coast America time to 3 or 3:30. So it's going to be about 3.5 hours on the 29th and 30th of December. So we're not doing a really big thing like we did in the past where we did like 12 hours a day or something. We're not doing that. So we're just going to have a small venue where we have a few speakers, maybe 10 speakers or something for a 3 hour time period where they all get 10 or 15 minutes at a time, or 15 to 20 minutes at a time to talk and then have a panel discussion. Okay. So if you're interested in that, okay, second commercial, and then we'll get back to what we're talking about here. Second commercial is that I do have a book out, right? And I'm going to bring that book up. Let me find the banners here, and I'll bring up a picture of the book to put up on the screen. It's called The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. And everybody gets it wrong. When I was doing a talk show about the book, the host said, I couldn't find your book. Is there a link for it? And I'm like, why couldn't you find my book? And he's like, well, I Googled The Reality of Reality. And I'm like, it's not called The Reality of Reality. It's called The Reality About Reality. And he was like, oh, well, he didn't say that live though, but luckily for me. So it's the reality about reality, returning to the old ways. That's on sale online worldwide currently. It's out there for you guys to look at. It's a comprehensive book about what we've been talking about so far today with the pyramid and the energy of that and the ascension. It is literally about what all religions knew in the past and what they're no longer teaching in these religions that is still there in these Bibles for you to see. And it's books that they don't even understand themselves because the teaching has been stifled from around the world, starting, about 1100 years ago, or maybe a little bit, give or take, 50 or 75 years or 100 years, about 1100 years ago, stifled on this earth and not allowed to be talked about or taught. And literally, it's still there in every religion. And I've talked about some of it today with the Christos and the Christ oil, and giving you information about how all of these things tie into the Jacob's ladder, and Thor, and his descension down to earth, Jesus and his descension, the pyramid in Giza and what it represents, the Golgotha, the skull, the place of the crucifixion, the Ark of the Covenant being inside your brain. All of these things were known throughout all of history in all of the religions that are currently left on this earth, and they were teaching it. Then at a certain time, evil people got control of the narrative, and they started the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, got rid of all the knowledge, burned all the books, burned all the scrolls, tried to eradicate human history from human history, and took control of the religions and had them just teaching like God's coming back for you in a bus, just wait here, and not teaching you how to ascend any longer. And that book is about that. It is about showing you that in history. And I'm writing another book currently that'll be out in a year or two from now, probably 2 years from now, by the time I finish it and get it through the publishers and out to the world. It's going to show in more detail what I throw at you in the first book. So you guys should take a look at that. It's on sale around the world. You should take a look at that book, and gives you a little bit more detail as to what we were talking about here. Then we were talking about setting up a time where I'm going to be working with you guys off air, answering your questions about not just it doesn't have to be about my book, just about guiding you and helping you on an ascension path, and kind of focusing you down that road. And Denise was the one who brought that up. Wasn't me that said, hey guys, I got an idea. I'm glad, because Rick asked, and then Denise said, hey, can we all join in to ask questions? Absolutely. This is where I want to go, because I like that setting. I can help you guys more than me just throwing information at you and teaching you about the law of one. Okay. So speaking of that, let's get back to the law of one and continue with the law of one in this session.
Is the pyramid shape that Jim has constructed in our yard functioning properly? Is it aligned properly and built properly? Ra, I am Ra. It is built within good tolerances, though not perfect. However, its alignment should be as this resting place for maximum efficacy. 59.22 Questioner, do you mean that one of the base sides should be aligned 20 degrees east of north? Ra, I am Ra. That alignment would be efficacious. 59.23 Questioner. Previously you stated that one of the base sides should be aligned with magnetic north. Which is better, to align with magnetic north or to align with 20 degrees east of magnetic north? Ra. I am Ra. This is at your discretion. The proper alignment for you of this.
I was showing off that coffee cup. That was a coffee cup that was one of my birthday presents from a friend of mine. And she just asked me about it yesterday. How's that coffee cup working out for you? And I said, I'm gonna use it on air tomorrow and make sure that I show it off on air tomorrow for you to see. So she's not here in the crowd right now, but I don't know if she'll watch the show, but I've given her a thank you recognition for the really cool Irish coffee cup that I got. It should have Irish coffee in it. If I still drank alcohol, there'd be a little Irish in that coffee, which over here in America, that means Irish whiskey in the coffee. But I don't drink alcohol anymore, so there's no Irish in there. There's just coffee. Okay, let's continue here.
Here at this time is magnetic north. However, in your query you asked specifically about a structure which has been used by specific entities whose energy vortices are more consonant with the, shall we say, true color green orientation. This would be the 20 degrees east of north. There are advantages to each orientation. The effect is stronger at magnetic north and can be felt more clearly. The energy, though weak, coming from the now distant, but soon to be paramount, direction is more helpful. The choice is yours. It is the choice between quantity and quality or wideband and narrowband aid in meditation. 59.24 Questioner. When the planetary axes realign, will they realign 20 degrees east of north to conform to the green vibration? Ra. I am Ra. We fear this shall be the last question as this entity rapidly increases its distortion towards what you call pain of the body complex. There is every indication that this will occur. We cannot speak of certainties but are aware that the grosser or less dense materials will be pulled into conformation with the denser and lighter energies which give your logos its proceedings through the realms of experience. May we answer any brief queries at this time? 59.25 Questioner. Only if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact. Ra. I am Ra. All is well. We are aware that you experience difficulties at this time, but they are not due to your lack of conscientiousness or dedication. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Right. So Amanda said, because those of you who are on the MP3 broadcast, you couldn't hear or see what I posted to put up on the screen like now. Amanda said, Irish coffee, my late Thursday afternoon knockoff drink. Let me get the the next session primed here while I'm talking. Yeah, I loved when I used to drink. I would do Irish coffee with a good Irish whiskey. Hold on, it's going to start playing here. A good Irish whiskey like Jameson, Tiller Madu these days, proper number 12, and I loved putting either raw sugar, a spoon of raw sugar, or brown sugar in it, and then of course you put either a marshmallow or in the United States, or they would spray it with a what's the thing I'm trying to say? The spray cream, and then mix it in. And I used to love that. And people would trip when I would say, do you have raw sugar? And they would go, no, I just have white sugar. And I go, do you have any brown sugar? Because brown sugar is so much better tasting mixed with whiskey and coffee. And so I would say, give me a spoon of brown sugar. If you have raw unbleached sugar, I'll take some of that, a spoon of that. But if not, do you have honey? And I would go right to honey because, oh man, honey makes the world go round. Yeah, I know, right? Amanda said that. And you're like, wait, it's Saturday here. Yeah, see, depending on where you are in the world, I don't know where she would be that it would still be Thursday because I'm in California and only Hawaii and Alaska are behind us. So it's not Thursday anywhere on the planet. I think she was talking about, yeah, but see, she said, yeah, but late on Thursday afternoon, just before knock off, my boss and I would have Irish coffee before heading home because we had Friday and Saturday off. So she's saying that her Friday was a Thursday, okay, and that they would have an Irish coffee before they knocked off for the day, and have an Irish coffee and then knock off and go home, right? Celeste, welcome. Jameson, I know, Cassie. Jameson, I'm with you on Jameson. Love that. You know, over here, that when Conor McGregor made his proper number 12, I laughed at Americans, and I'm born American, so don't get me wrong, but I was raised European and definitely European descent, Irish descent, but half, because the other half of me is Western Viking, Southern Viking and Western Viking, of course, because of being a Celt. But I was raised on Jameson, and Tillamookta that's just real harsh for Americans. So proper number 12 was a little throaty for Americans, and I liked that it was aged in I think it was white oak, the burnt barrels, because Jameson is aged in some good barrel. And if I don't taste the wood, it's not a good Irish whiskey. And people over here like that sour mash whiskey that I can't drink here in America, like Jack Daniels and the like. I get violent. I have a 2%, 5% Native American blood in me. I can't drink sour mash whiskey. I start getting angry and I get violent. So, but I can drink the piss out of Irish whiskey. And proper number 12, I enjoyed the taste of that when I used to drink a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago before I quit. I enjoyed that. But Jameson was my ride or die when it came to whiskey. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're at. And that can only be made in one part of the world, like Scotch from Scotland. Jameson, it has to be made in Ireland because it has to come out of that specific river over there in the west. I think it's the west. Peter, you'd have to tell me. I think isn't it Tyrone or Cork that it's was traditionally made. Don't quote me because I'm not from Ireland, but I think Peter probably would know, or anybody else. Maybe even Cassie would know if she drinks enough of Jameson. Okay, so Rick, because Rick said whatever day off. Rick, we'll figure out what day off that you have, and we'll try to see if Peter wants to come in. And we'll try to set up a time during the day where it's not too early for you guys in Australia and not too late for the people in the UK, because I'll be somewhere in the middle, like I do this show at 3 p.m. It's fine for me because it's right when you're waking up and the people are about to go to bed in Ireland. Same thing with Sweden and Germany. So we can figure that out, and I'll set up a studio. If there's too many of us, we'll get a Zoom going. And then I can talk to you guys. You can ask me questions, and we can work, and I can help you guys with your journey, and we can go from there and start looking into if we need to do specific topics. We can figure out what you guys feel best with, and then move on from there, and do that stuff off air, unless you guys want to do it on air. But that becomes personal. You might want if there's certain things that you want to say that you don't want the whole world knowing about, and the same for if there's individual things that you want to talk to me about where you don't want everybody else in the group to know about. We can also have individual sessions. Okay, so let's continue with episode. I think this is session number 57 now. I wasn't paying attention, and we'll go ahead and get started on this. And we'll move into this before I end up talking too much and not doing much of the love one. Okay, let's continue here.
July 1st, 1981. 60.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now.
Right, the other one was 59, right? Let me look on my phone. As soon as I heard 60, I was like, is that right? Did I skip something and I go to the wrong place there? Hold on one tick. I wasn't paying attention before. Yes, that was 59, so now we're on 60. Okay, let's continue.
60.1 Questioner. Could you first give me an indication of the instrument's condition? Ra. I am Ra. It is as previously stated. 60.2 Questioner. It is my opinion that the best way for the instrument to improve her condition is through periods of meditation followed by periods of contemplation with respect to the condition and its improvement. Could you tell me if I am correct and expand on my thinking? Ra. I am Ra. Meditation and contemplation are never untoward activities. However, This activity will in all probability, in our opinion, not significantly alter the predispositions of this instrument which cause the fundamental distortions which we, as well as you, have found disconcerting. 60.3 Questioner, can you tell me the best approach for altering, to a more acceptable condition, the distortions that the instrument is experiencing? Ra, I am Ra. There is some small amount of work which the instrument may do concerning its pre-incarnative decisions regarding service to the infinite creator in this experience. However, the decision to open without reservation to the offering of self when service is perceived as such a fundamental choice that it is not open to significant alteration, nor would we wish to interfere with the balancing process which is taking place with this particular entity. The wisdom and compassion being so balanced by this recapitulation of fourth density is helpful to this particular mind/body/spirit complex. It is not an entity much given to quibbling with the purity with which it carries out that which it feels it is best to do. We may say this due to the instrument's knowledge of itself which is clear upon this point. However, this very discussion may give rise to a slightly less fully unstopped dedication to service in any one working so that the service may be continued over a greater period of your space/time. 60.4 Questioner, you are saying, then, that the physical distortions that the instrument experienced are part of a balancing process? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The physical distortions are a result of the instrument's not accepting fully the limitations placed prior to incarnation upon the activities of the entity once it had begun the working. The distortions caused by this working, which are inevitable given the plan chosen by this entity, are limitation and, to a degree consonant with the amount of vital and physical energy expended, weariness, due to that which is the equivalent in this instrument of many, many hours of harsh physical labor. This is why we suggested the instrument's thoughts dwelling upon the possibility of its suggesting to its higher self the possibility of some slight reservation of energy in a working. This instrument at this time is quite open until all resources are quite exhausted. This is well if desired. However, it will, shall we say, shorten the number of workings in what you may call the long run. 60.5 Question.
Okay, so I just talked about this with someone. I think I mentioned it last week on the show. People sometimes come through with learning abilities without having any guidance on those abilities. We did talk about this last week. And in doing so, deplete their own energy because they're not drawing a reserve of energy before you start. And because of that, it creates, in this case, distortions, physical issues. We talked about that. I talked about people like, I just had his name on the tip of my brain and it went away. It's right there and it keeps coming and going. I don't know why it's doing that. Edgar Casey, where it physically damaged his body and he ended up dying from it because he wasn't properly, one, protecting himself from people being in service to self and stealing information from him, two, not charging himself with enough energy so that he wasn't depleting his own energy and doing damage to his own beingness. Okay, so this is what Raw is talking about, that Carla is opening herself up. The package that she chose, I like that he used the reference the way he did, which I'm going to rewind so you guys can hear that, because I know I kind of shifted away from that and I want to shift back to it. So let me back this up just a little bit here. And I want you to hear the choice of words that Raw uses describing this, okay? And then we'll discuss that. So let me back up here and see where we are here. I probably went back too far, so let's let it run here.
Continued over a greater period of your space/time. 60.4 Questioner, you are saying, then, that the physical distortions that the instrument experienced are part of a balancing process? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The physical distortions are a result of the instrument's not accepting fully the limitations placed prior to incarnation upon the activities of the entity once it had begun the working. The distortions caused by this working, which are inevitable given the plan chosen by this entity.
The plan chosen by this entity. Okay? The plan chosen by this entity. The plan of a skill set. I'll take that one, please, to go. the type of skill set that she took, the plan that she took, brought with her here. She didn't fully read the packet and read that, oh, this one does not include extra batteries of energy that is not the reserve that I have physically. No one down here was capable of understanding what she was going through to say to her, the skill set that you brought with you doesn't include an extra battery for your charging to keep yourself from doing damage to yourself. And you're opening yourself up and just depleting your own battery when you're channeling. A better way of doing that is to set up now a battery for yourself to pull in this extra energy into, so that you deplete that and learn when that one's empty, so that you can then end the session so you don't do any damage to yourself. You would be surprised how many people choose a plan which is plug and play. You guys, you need to realize how it works. You don't. Most people don't. So I like the wording, the verbiage used by Ra here to explain that Carla grabbed up a plan to use down here of a skill set, but didn't realize that that skill set didn't have, because it was probably economical for her to do, and she liked the tuning that it had for her to do that, but she was not paying attention to what could be detrimental to herself, whether maybe she didn't care so much and she was just willing to get this information out, and I just want the best package I can have. You have to realize that your skill set is a skill set that is tuned for specific reasons. And then if you're aware, you can then add to it when you're here to protect yourself from certain things. That's what we're supposed to do. So sometimes people come through with a skill set that is fire, and it's a Corvette, but it only has a 5-gallon gas tank, as opposed to somebody who's driving this big giant semi truck that's got a 5,000-gallon gas tank. Slower, harder to turn, takes more time to get going, but you can go further without ever having to stop and fuel up. Or that fast burning car that goes from 0 to 8,000 miles an hour in a half a second, but you can only go 200 miles. So you get there in an hour. That's the tortoise and the hare, people. And yes, thank you. This is why I love when I'm talking about this when Celeste shows up. Right? Celeste says your skill set can be found in your natural chart. Okay, so you can find out what your skill set you brought with you, because when you come in and design your life, thank you, Celeste. When you design your life, like me designing my life, you design who you're going to be, who your parents are going to be, what DNA you're going to have. All of that helps you to work with the skill set that you chose. The moment you're born, the year you're born, the month you're born, the day you're born, the hour you're born, the minute you're born, also gives you enhancements or lowers enhancements for other things for the skill set that you're going to be balancing yourself as. So all of your charts tell you what your skill set is that you brought in. Some people are aware of it and they can look into it. Do you see? Celeste is one of those people. She knows about that. So you have to, if you're going to do this kind of work in any way, you need to go to somebody who is knowledgeable about those specifics, where they can warn you, hold on, before you go running out there to the world and taking on the world and doing me against the world. You have a skill set that you should learn what it is that you have, so you know your strengths and your weaknesses, so that you can work to your strengths and augment your weaknesses, meaning be aware of them and figure out what you can do to enhance them in a positive way to make them more like your strengths, instead of being a weakness that it might do damage to yourself. Through guidance, you can learn this stuff. Unfortunately, people think As soon as they get ability, they're like, I got to tell the whole world and I got to run out there. And you don't realize that people that are in service to self can't wait for you to step you out into the deep end without a snorkel. They're going to grab you and they're going to give you a death roll like a crocodile at the bottom of the pool and wait for you to drown. And you're going to almost drown and you're going to get away from them and you're going to go up to the top and you're going to cry. And they're going to love every second and torture you until you get out of the pool and don't come back. Okay? And that's unfortunately what happens to everybody. And if you don't have people that are that can guide you so that you can protect yourself and understand or understand what it is that you have to work with and what the strengths and more importantly what your weaknesses are so that you can strengthen the weaknesses, then people run out there and they go running headlong into disaster. And only thing we can do is sit back and watch them do it and then be there for them to pick them up and kiss their boo-boo and put a Band-Aid on it. And then they get up and run off to go play again. And all we can do is watch them and wait. And every time you guys fall, pick you back up until eventually you go, why do I keep falling? Now you're asking the right questions. Why do I keep falling down? Okay. So Les said, I paid for an advanced chart, but you can get a basic free one from, what is that? Astrologycafe.com. Thank you. I'm looking over here and I can look on the screen there and read it. Astrology Cafe, ASTROLOGYCAF as in Frank E.com. So you can get a cheap one there or a free one there that's a basic one, and it'll kind of give you an idea. But you can then pay for like she said, you can pay for an advanced one, right? And she has a link here. Let's put this up on the screen. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong button for the wrong thing. Right, here's the link, right? It's I'll read you the entire URL for those of you listening on the MP3 broadcast. It's https://astrology.cafe.natal.php. Type that into your browser and it'll take you there. If you see on the screen, you can see it on the screen. You can then just pause this and type that into your browser. So you need to be aware of what you're working with. Always assume that when you start doing anything with any kind of abilities, psychic abilities, reading abilities, empath abilities, whatever they are, if they are in fact, an extrasensory perception, some sort of form of ESP, you have to realize that the second you start doing that, you're no longer mundane. Your vibration is no longer the average vibration of the average human. You are now starting to vibrate at a higher rate of speed and a higher vibration that is out of the norm. Evil people look for that to attack you because you're now doing something that is assisting other humans, and that's being in service to others, and they can't have that. You're also starting to ascend. They can't have that. It goes against their power, their control, their money, their fame, and everything that they stand for. So you become a target. The second you start trying to help other people in life, in a mundane way, if you're a nurse or a doctor or anything where I'm a social worker, you have to realize that evil is going to try and target you and make your life miserable because they're trying to stop you from being in that profession, because that profession is in service to others. Okay? That is the modus operandi of people in service to self on every third dimensional planet in the known multiverse. It is the yin and yang, the ecosystem that the creator of the universe has set up for this place. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe me or not, doesn't matter. Because if I tell you the sky is blue and you don't look up and you refuse to believe that it's blue, or you say, I don't see blue the same color that you see blue, and maybe I see blue as red. You can believe whatever you want, but there's a sky up there. Okay? You can pretend it's something it's not, but it's a sky. The same thing with, you can pretend there is no evil people on this earth, there's just people. Until someone rapes you, murders you, pillages you, steals your life, steals your money, steals something from you, treats you like crap, beats you up, or does something that you will eventually go, well, that was just fucking evil. Why did that person do it? Because they are evil. Okay? So until you realize that about 14% of the population, and admit it to yourself, there are just some people who are just evil. And they know it. You just don't know about it because they can hide here. Okay? That you have to get used to. So then, if you can get to that point, you have to then realize that anytime I do something that's going to draw attention to myself, those evil people, some of them, maybe even only 1% of them, they are going to try and stop me, control me, do damage to me, and stop me from doing this. That's called opposition. I call it opposition. Okay? So you have to realize that. Reese, I don't know if I said welcome to you earlier when you were here. So welcome. Right? And that's exactly it. Celeste says they decided before they came here to play the game and their part, because that's what those people do. You can't have, this ecosystem has to be the way it is. So there has to be a certain amount of people that are evil here, because this is the way it's designed, so that everybody can have a full encompassing experience of life and death. You can't have life without death, so you can't have good without evil. You can't have left without right or up without down. So you have to have it equal and opposite, right? So the evil people have you believe that it's 50-50 good to evil. It's not that way, because evil is so far from the light, there's less of them. So literally 84%, 86% of the population is the equal to 14% of the population that's evil. That's how evil those 14% are. Okay? But it takes the 86% to balance how evil they are with the good of the 80s. It takes 86% of the population. So you need to realize that. So you're not just dealing with a person who is just as evil as you are good. Okay? But then on an individual level, you need to realize that you are equal to that 86%. And that's what we need to get you into the mindset of, and teach you that truly one person, and this is why I talk about this, you ever go to that place in a dream that you think's a dream, that is the place where there are only about 5 or 6 people, usually 7, sometimes 3, that are standing, and there's this onslaught of this evil army coming at you, and one person steps forward and stands, and they're able to hold off this entire onslaught until everybody in the onslaught and of evil is crushing against this person. And that person, when they deplete all of their energy and they all collapse, and then the other people reach over and pull that person back, and one other person stands forward, and all the other people, evil people, run away for a minute, and then that person stands and waits, and eventually they come at them again. Why is it that when I ask that question, there's so many of you out there that go, I've had that exact dream? Why is it that dream that you didn't realize you had is the same dream that everybody has, that they don't realize they have? Because that place isn't a dream, and that place actually exists. And one person greeting them with the love and the light of the infinite creator can hold off all of the evil by themselves. But you have to have that love and light of the infinite creator within you. So not everybody goes to that place and stands. But those who do are like, oh my God, how did you know I had that dream? Because it's not a dream. Because you've done it, and you've gone there. You've taken your turn. Okay? That is done so that you realize that you, as one, have the ability to be all and tap into that. But you also have to protect the weakness and trust other people around you to be able to do that. right? Yeah, and that goes to what Celeste is saying here is right. What Yoda said about the dark side, right? Evil is easier. It's powerful. It's easier to tap into. It's more seductive. When Yoda said that to Luke, when he said, "Is the dark side stronger?" and he said, "No, it's just easier. It's faster. It's more seductive." Okay, so because of that, people will tend to try and play with it. Right now, I have a solicitor. It looks like it's about to come to my front door and knock. So hopefully my mother won't get up and decide to go over there and try to talk to him, because I'm not going to, because I'm live on air, and hopefully my mother will just ignore the knock and he'll eventually go away. Okay, so if I was not on the air, I'd be calling the manager and saying, there's people in this apartment complex soliciting right now, and they would send security after them, because they're not supposed to do that. So yeah, you have to realize that the dark side is easier for some people, and if you're drawn to it, that's why he said if you go down that path forever, it'll dominate your destiny, because you'll start the cat's going over to see what's going on. That's hilarious. My mom's not getting up. The cat's going over and watching them out the window. Who are these people knocking on the door? She looked at me like, why aren't you answering the door? My mom didn't. The cat did. Cat, look, that's hilarious. She looked over at me. She was on the back of my mom's chair. She looked over at me like, you don't hear this? And she jumped down and went over, and she's standing on, I think she's on my chair now. She's standing on my chair, and she's looking out the window and watching them as they walked away. That's hilarious. And my mom's now looking like, what's she looking at? That's funny. The cat is looked at me like, hey, you hearing this? There's somebody at the door, man. That's funny. Okay. So, right. So you shine brighter. This is the tortoise and the hare, right? You shine brighter in the darkness. The brighter you shine, the more shadows come out. You also, that's burn the candle at both ends. Burn the shooting star, the candle that burns the brightest burns the shortest. The tortoise and the hare. The hare is faster, trying to get there, burning all of its energy, running as fast as it can, and then it peters out at the end. And the tortoise, taking its time, saving its energy, and not being in a hurry, it overcomes the tortoise, who is out of energy and laying down, panting, and just walks right on by at the same pace. That's that joke that was in the movie Colors back in the day, that Sean Penn was in a hurry, and he was the new guy in the cop car, and he jumped out and chased these guys, and they never caught him. Robert Duvall was the old, weathered 25-year-old year veteran, or a 30-year veteran, and was about ready to retire. And he said, what's the matter, old timer? You didn't jump out and help. And he says, let me tell you this story of a papa bull and a baby, or a young bull, sitting on a mountaintop overlooking a bunch of cows down in the valley. And the young buck says to the father bull, hey, Dad, let's run down the hill and fuck one of those cows. And the dad says to the son, hey, son, how about we walk down the hill and fuck them all? Right? I know I should have warned you that there was cussing involved in that. But the whole purpose of him telling him that story was, right, it was the same as saying you get more flies with honey than you do with water or anything else. So you have to realize that it's easy and seductive to fall into the trap of being in service to others. Likes, clicks, power, money, fame. If you're only living in the flesh in 3D, and you never want to ascend in any way, and you don't care about that, and all you care about is money, then life for you is easy, because all you have to do is be in service to self, be selfish, self-centered, rip everybody off, know that you're only going to have friends that you pay for, and the ones that are going to try and rip you off, and get used to, when you start making friends, you're going to have some of them, like the ones that are going to jail in the last few years here in the United States, that are going to rape you, pillage you, and then stick a needle in you to give you, after they burned you out and raped you enough to deplete all of your energy, to give you an IV so that you can keep going, so they can keep using you. And they're going to do that either physically, mentally, or in your career. They're going to own you. They're going to rape you, pimp you out, force you to give them money, give them part of what you're giving them, and the only way that you get a job is to do what they tell you to do, because that is the modus operandi of what really goes on here. And more of that has been coming out in the past 7 years or so, 10 years or so, around the world in the United States. Whereas before that, it never was being in the forefront, and people didn't even want to know about it. Everybody knew about it, but nobody talked about it. Why? Because that was what went on. So that is what goes on. And when people say that to you, people say that's just a lie and it's a conspiracy theory. And then someone goes to jail, and then people look back on it and go, maybe that wasn't such a lie after all. They're doing that now about some people who tried to blow the whistle on Diddy, P. Diddy, 10 years ago, who tried to say, you guys need to understand what's going on here. And people were like, that's just somebody who's jealous and blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden, P. Diddy went to jail for exactly what they said. And now people looking back going, wow, maybe P. Diddy did murder a certain rap star 20 years ago that may or may not have been assassinated. Just saying. So you have to realize what you're getting into. And on the other side of the coin, if you're trying to do good for the world, you have to realize that they are trying to be in control of everything here as well. So you're going to be up against opposition for everything that you do. So you have to become aware of that so that you can, right? Yeah, Celeste says, I remember the 90s, right? Yeah, you remember the stuff that people were talking about. Bizarre how it's all coming out now, right? Yeah, I remember the 90s conspiracies, she said, and it's bizarre how it's all coming out now. Well, it's taken this amount of time to get people to talk about it. One of the girls that is now coming out against Diddy is literally saying that, you know, she was raped repeatedly over and over and put on an IV, you know, just what I described to you. She never talked about it before because she was scared. She was afraid to. Now she's one of the people coming out. There's going to be more. Same thing happened to what's his name that just went to jail not too long ago, and the same thing happened to Epstein when he got put in jail, and you know what I mean. So the Me Too movement has helped, and luckily there are some good people. I mean, when you consider though, I mean, look at this. Jim Caviezel does a movie. Angel Studios took up the movie. They're the ones that are doing the Chosen television series. They did that movie. It was a true story that Jim Caviezel played the part of a ex-Secret Service agent who started realizing this trafficking of children going on around the world and specifically coming into the United States. And he quit his job to go and help these kids in real life. Not Jim Caviezel, but the person that Jim Caviezel played the part of. And because of what he did to help bring light to the world about these kids and save some kids, they decided to make a movie about his life. And the industry sued them and tried to get that movie never released on this earth. And they got it into a limited production because they didn't want anyone to know about it. Why would the industry fight so hard and try to stop a movie that is about helping children that were being trafficked for sexual reasons and for slavery in the United States and around the world? Why would the industry, the film industry, try to stop that movie from being told to the world? Happened. Look it up. Why would they not want that movie out there for the world? Let's see. In the last 4 years alone, just in the last 4 years that we know of, the federal government of the United States of America does not know of the whereabouts of 328,000 children between the age of 0 and 18 years of age who came across the southern border of the United States of America into America, missing and our government does not know where they are, who has them, what they're being done to, and they're not looking for them. Why? Look that up. I'm not making up a number. This isn't a fake fact. It's a conspiracy theory. It's actual fact that you can look up. 4 years worth of children coming across the border, and they know for sure that 328,000 of them are currently missing. Our government does not know who has them and who they were released to inside the United States of America just in the last 4 years. Why do they not care enough to look into that? And including, up to and including when people said to them, wait a minute, there's 328,000 children missing. Where are they? Our government went, I don't know. Well, then who would know? I don't know. Well, are you looking into it? Not my job. What do you mean it's not your job? Whose job is it? I don't know. Maybe it's those ICE people's job. They go to ICE, they're like, no, that's not actually our job. That's another organization that they're supposed to know that is a Child Protective Services in the United States. And when you go to those people, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you think that that's something that you should look into? Get right on that. We'll get right on that. And then when you check back, they're like, we're looking into it. Well, have you found anything? It's an ongoing investigation. We can't talk about it. Donald Rumsfeld, who was working for the government back in the 90s, 80s, he was on an oversight committee. He ended up being in the cabinet for one of the presidents not too long after that. He was on one of the committees that was looking into, an oversight committee that was looking into the spending habits of the United States government. And they found that there was trillions in $84 missing that the federal government had that was allocated to be spent and disappeared. And he went to the people whose job is to regulate the money that taxpayers give the government to pay for things, and asked them, where did those $2 trillion go? And they said, what? And they said, there's $2 trillion missing. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're aware of that. Okay, well, where did it go? Your job is making sure that money gets to where it's supposed to go. We'll look into that for you. So they said, okay, so when can you give me an idea of where that money was? It's an ongoing investigation, and we'll get back to you. 40 years has gone by, and they never, ever, ever said where that money went. Sound familiar to you? So you have to realize that right in front of your face, there is nefariousness that's happening, and people are just not giving answers, and people stop following up. Because then what happens is people get retaliated against for asking the question. And then they go, how did that person get this information that there was $2 trillion missing? Who told Donald Rumsfeld that question? Who told him that? Oh, well, apparently it was a whistleblower. I want the name of that whistleblower. Who? And then the whistleblower gets fired from their job, goes to jail, or gets in an accident and dies. Or all of the above. Gets what we now refer to as being Epstein. Epstein got arrested because he was taking care of allowing rich elite politicians, actors, and oligarchs in America to have sex with underage boys and girls around the United States, sometimes on his plane, sometimes on his boat, sometimes on his island, sometimes bringing them to you, didn't matter. And he went to jail for that. And then he was in a prison with two inept guards who both fell asleep at the exact same time that the cameras were malfunctioning, that the cellmate that was with him also fell asleep at the exact same time, and he supposedly hung himself in the cell. But when the doctors looked at his larynx, it was crushed, meaning he didn't hang himself and couldn't have, because the sudden drop, even from the height of standing up on the top bunk bed, jumping down, would not have crushed his larynx that way. It would have only broken his neck, and that was synonymous with someone who strangled him to death. And all of the cameras were broken, and all of the people were asleep when it happened, and no one heard it until 2 hours later they found him dead. Same thing happened in South Africa to a man named Stephen Biko 45 years ago, who was the head of the group of people in South Africa who were fighting against apartheid in the South African government. His underling, he was the boss of the movement to free South Africa. His underling was a man that you might know the name of, called Nelson Mandela. His name was Stephen Biko. Him and Nelson Mandela both got arrested as being terrorists and put into a prison where Nelson Mandela spent like 20 years in prison or something like that before he got out. And Stephen Biko got Epsteined. Apparently, two inept guards fell asleep at the same time as the cameras malfunctioned, and his cellmate also fell asleep, and he used the shoelaces from his shoes and hung himself in his cell. But Nelson Mandela didn't get killed, but he stayed in his prison cell until he was freed, and eventually solved apartheid and became the president of South Africa and brokered the freedom of the people. Sound familiar? Strange. Anyways, so I know that you're saying, now you're talking politics. I'm not. I'm talking religion of the evil people on this earth and their modus operandi, which is what Ra is talking to you about and warning you about, the modus operandi of the Orion Crusaders and the knowledge that they brought to this earth and how that functions down here. Warning you because you need to know how big the beast is. And the druids teach you that it's the dragon, and that you have to be careful, because if you get the attention of the dragon and it looks at you, it will burn you to cinders and cast you into oblivion. Buddies of mine used to refer to the deep state as the dragon, the druid dragon. Okay? But it's nature. So it is the nature of the beast. The beast from the Bible is nature. It is the flesh. It is living in that which is in service to self. Those people will do everything to do harm to you if you are in service to others and you're unaware of them and what they can do. And this is what Ra is trying to warn Carla, or Dawn, about, that Carla chose her abilities to come in here and didn't realize that she needed to charge herself with energy so that she wasn't expending her own energy and doing damage to herself. Do you see? And this is what Ra is talking about here. So let's continue with that, right? Worked in jail, no such thing as a coincidence, right? Celeste says, worked in jail, no such thing as a coincidence. Everyone knows what's going on. Absolutely. There is no such thing as a coincidence. So if somebody gets killed, there's people that can see into the other cell, or look, and they have mirrors. They look out with the mirrors down the wall. There's no way that nobody in a maximum prison had no idea that somebody got murdered in that prison, because everybody knows what everybody's doing. There's no such thing as privacy, right? Celeste is absolutely 100% accurate. Okay. Right? And this, getting back to this, Celeste says pro-life is just children born in the system. The border was just an easier place to collect children. They want kids born in the impoverished families so that they can take them. Right? She's referring to evil people, and it's easier just to grab up the ones coming across the border. And then there's some that they call, what do they call them? They call them frequent children, where somebody comes in and says, this is my 5-year-old daughter, and they are accompanying her into the United States. Then a month later, somebody else shows up with the same girl and says, "This is my 5-year-old daughter," and comes into the United States. I'm like, "Isn't that the girl that was just here?" They take a picture of her, ask her name, talk to her, and then she goes into the country and they release her with Hector. And then a month or two later, she shows up 100 miles away at a different border crossing with another person coming in. It's the same girl. And they start, because of that, they start really paying attention to all the children and taking pictures of them. And they start realizing that they're literally somehow getting that child back out of the country. And then somebody's coming across the border using her to get themselves across the border over and over and over. And then she disappears after the third or fourth time or fifth time. And they don't know whether she was in America or in Mexico, or if she's a slave here, or if she's dead now. They have no idea. There's those kids that happens to. And then there's some that just come in and disappear and no one ever sees them again. Are they being adopted by people? Are they being harvested for surgeries, for their organs? Are they sex slaves? Are they physical slaves? Whatever you can imagine is probably what's happening. And none of those are, they're living happily ever after with their cousin Hector. Okay. And why is it that when Angel Studios and Jim Caviezel, being an actor, played the part of a person in real life who was investigating and stopping that, why is it that the film industry and the rich oligarchs from this country tried to ban that movie from being aired anywhere on this earth? Ask yourself that question. Let's continue with what's going on here. So you need to be aware of what you're trying to do, what abilities you have, what that entails, what your own weaknesses are that can be exploited by evil people, because they will 100% do it if you allow them. And this is what Ra is talking about currently.
Our limitation end, to a degree consonant with the amount of vital and physical energy expended, weariness, due to that which is the equivalent in this instrument of many, many hours of harsh physical labor. This is why we suggested the instrument's thoughts dwelling upon the possibility of its suggesting to its higher self the possibility of some slight reservation of energy at a working. This instrument at this time is quite open until all resources are quite exhausted. This is well if desired. However, it will, shall we say, shorten the number of workings in what you may call the long run. 60.5 Questioner, while spreading the workings out over greater intervals of time so that we have more time between workings. Hell. Ra, I am Ra. This you have already done. It is not helpful to your group to become unbalanced by concern for one portion of the work above another. If this instrument is, in your judgment, capable, and if the support group is functioning well, if all is harmonious, and if the questions to be asked have been considered well, the working is well begun. To overly stress the condition of the instrument is as deleterious to the efficiency of this contact as the antithetical behavior was in your past. 60.6 Questioner, aside from the workings, I am concerned about the physical distortions of the instrument in the area of hands and arms. Is there a, shall we say, mental exercise or something else that the instrument could work on to help to alleviate the extreme problems she has at this time with her hands, etc.? Ra, I am Ra. Yes. 60.7 Questioner, would this be an exercise of meditation and contemplation upon the alleviation of these problems? Ra, I am Ra. No. 60.8 Questioner, what would she do then in order to alleviate these problems? Ra, I am Ra. As we have said, this instrument, feeling that it lacked compassion to balance wisdom, chose an incarnative experience whereby it was of necessity placed in situations of accepting self in the absence of other self's acceptance, and the acceptance of other self without expecting a return or energy transfer. This is not an easy program for an incarnation, but was deemed proper by this entity.
Again, do you see the terms being used here? This is not an easy program. So you also have to realize that Ra is inferring that this is an illusion and not any different than AI. Okay, but you have to learn your abilities. So you have to do the shadow work. You have to do the objective research on yourself. You have to learn to maintenance yourself and spend time with yourself, but not from a standpoint of a victim, not being subjective. Being subjective means that you're a subject, you're someone's victim, you're looking at something that has power over you, even yourself. That's why you have to become objective, not objective, not looking at yourself as an object, but objective, looking at yourself from a standpoint of honesty. Okay? So you have to realize I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I came here with abilities. What abilities did I come here with? What abilities am I drawn to, if any? What do I have to work with? What are my strengths and weaknesses? We teach this in leadership for business. Okay? That you need to learn what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, what your abilities are. What do I have as my learning curve? How do I learn? Right? We teach you this. I went to school for this when I was 20, literally, and then went to management school by the time I was 22, right? So I had leadership skills and was moving into manager school, and I had already gone through Druid school, and by the time I was 19. So I was literally getting all this advanced training. I literally went to a class to teach you what kind of tie to wear when, how to dress, how to put a tie on, what kind of tie you want to use, depending on what you're doing and trying to portray to people, how to hold your hands, how to talk with your hands, how to box things in, how to gesture with your hands, where to look with your eyes. This is all skill sets that people pay money for on this earth. Most of you are unaware of. And that's not even spy craft. Okay? That's not even business craft. Those are things. Some of you probably heard of spy craft before. Okay, so that has skills that people learn and pay money for. What makes you think people aren't learning how to take advantage of people and paying money to learn that? Okay, and that's why if you haven't watched the TV series that's in season 2 now, that is called The Old Man, you might want to watch that, because not only do you learn spycraft a little bit, but you learn the mindset of what it takes for a person. There's a conversation, I remember the episode that it was in, but there's a couple of conversations where Jeff Bridges' character, I think his name's John, he's talking to his love interest, and she's asking questions about spycraft. And he's explaining things to her, and she's objectively looking at it and poking holes in some of the stuff that he says. But then there's other things that he says that she's just, you can tell she's like, what the fuck did he just, wow. Because he talks about the skill set of being able to read someone and find their weaknesses and exploit their weaknesses, so that if you're a spy and you're trying to turn someone and get them to work with you by charming them like a vampire, that you use their weaknesses to your advantage. So you have to be able to find their weaknesses and know that they're real weaknesses, not ones that they want you to think they have. So there's this chess game that's played that's a psychological game that will fuck your brain up. And he says the problem with that is that when you turn that on, you can never turn that skill off. And so you always assume that everybody's working you and that you're somebody's mark. Always. Because your mindset is you're looking to make them your mark. Always. And you can't turn it off. So these are the things that we tell you about that is the point of no return, the seminal point. Be careful where you go here, because you can't unlearn what you have learned. You cannot turn this off. Okay, and spycraft is one of those. When you get to a certain point, it becomes so paranoid that you can't afford to turn it off. And that was his point of that. Okay, but it's not that way when you're just trying to be in service to others. You don't have to get that in depth with it, right? The easiest thing is the first step of avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. There's a reason I say that. If you just assume that evil people are looking for you and they're going to try and corrupt you, do damage to you, take advantage of you, rip you off, rape you, steal your personality, steal you, everything they can do to discredit you, get you doxxed, get you taken off the internet, get you. If you just assume that, when you start doing things in service to others without getting too paranoid about it, because there's a fine line that you can walk where you can just go, yeah, it's probably going to happen. But then if you get paranoid to where you think it's happening all the time, you've gone too far, and then you're in trouble. And that's why we try to teach you to just assume that evil people are going to do evil shit, but don't overthink it, because that'll run you down the rabbit hole. That'll screw your mind up so bad that you'll just go, oh my God, everybody's trying to get me. And that's where people get really paranoid and they freak out and they start having mental problems because of it. Right? Yeah, right. Right. The red pill, right? The red pill monosphere guys have been pushing. What is that? I go to read it over here and it scrolls up. I should just look at the screen, right? Manipulator skills for years, manifestation on a narcissistic level. Reiterating what I was saying about those people and that they're negative in what they do. Ego driven, right? Ego driven. And I'm the only one in my reality. Everyone else is a guest. That's the definition of service to self. Right? Narcissism. So yeah, because you have to realize they don't believe that there's a God. I am, all of this is created for me. And when I die, you guys are going to cease to exist because I am actually God here. That is a true narcissist. That is a person who is truly in service to self. Even when another person looks at them and says, no, I am God here and you were created for me and my pleasure. Yeah, until I kill you and prove that I'm still here. You don't say that out loud, but that's what they think. Until I make you my bitch and show you who's boss and who's in charge here. That's the true manifestation in the ego of a person who is a narcissist, who is in service to self. And that's what Celeste was talking about. So those people who are full on down that road, they're the ones that are hiding from you and acting like they're your best friend until they get what they want from you. And those people are really good at spycraft, but not everybody who's in that industry is evil. Some of us learn that stuff because we needed those skills. Some of us have those skills and defeat people who have those skills. That's why you see like the Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon. Those were written about, I talked about this 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Those are written about the profiler in the FBI who used to be the teacher who taught profiling for serial rapists and serial killers in the United States, for FBI agents to be able to profile people, specifically going after the really dark ones. Because you have to be able to separate yourself from emotion so that you don't get caught in it. And that's what I'm talking about with the ideology of not getting too paranoid. If you can separate yourself from the emotion, and not get the paranoid streak in having your ego take control of it, and see it clinically like Spock. That's why I loved Spock in his character, because he could logically look at a scenario and go to its conclusion without any kind of emotional attachment to it whatsoever. That's kind of what they teach you to do when you go to Quantico in that schooling. And then if you're going into the deep state, they would prefer you if you're a narcissist that they can control, because you're already halfway in that mindset that you need to be in to do evil shit. And, so those people end up in the same places, working together, screwing each other over, ripping each other off, killing each other, vying for who's in control of the deep state or whatever. Okay, so you have to realize that about what's going on. So without getting too far in it and getting too paranoid about it, but that's the opposition that you're going to be up against. So it's easier and more clinical for us to say opposition, and that's a full encompassing ideology, and be aware of that if you choose to be in service to others, because your vibration, your color changes, your aura changes, your vibration is at a different level, and not just people who are looking for help will find you, but people who are nefarious will also see you a little clearer than when you were just hiding in the crowd. because you were just a normal person, and they just saw you as a mark. Now they see you as their enemy. There's a difference. So you have to realize that in spycraft and in everything, if you're going to be doing something in the craft, that there is people on the opposing side who, the more higher your vibration, the more independent minded you are, the closer to your ascension, the more they hate you. Right? So you have to learn to be able to keep your head down so they can't just see you, just like they do to you. You have to learn to be able to stand in a room and look around and go, evil, evil, thinks he's evil, good, 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 good. And then when an evil person looks at you, you either go, yeah, that's right, and have the confidence, or be able to go, you can't see me. Okay? So we first teach you to go, you can't see me, until we can get you to a point where when they look at you, you go, yep, hi. I greet you with the love and the light of the infinite creator. Okay? And then they'll hate you. So you have to be willing to be careful with that, because if they think they can physically attack you to dominate you, they will. And first they'll try to intimidate you. So you have to be careful if you confront evil people that you're willing to go that far, because they will, because they're evil. They'll do that. So we get you up to speed there where you can look at that stuff, right? People throw rocks at things that shine. It's hard to draw attention. Yeah, right? True story. Right? I'm glad that Cassie's feeling better too, right? Because she said that she'd be willing to help now that she feels better, right? Which I'm happy with that, right? She wasn't feeling good. She was having issues. We all go through it. Right. I just went through a week and a half, almost 2 weeks of probably had COVID. Right. Probably had COVID. And, every time I go to Walmart, I order stuff because I don't go there and walk in and shop. Not because I don't want to, but because I can't be gone for a really long time with my mom by herself here at the house. So I order stuff online, and then I pull up and they load it up and I bring it home, but they still have to grab it all and touch it. I don't know if they spray their shit down or if they're just really infected, but every time I go to Walmart, I catch a bug after going to Walmart, right? And it's supposed to be that if you catch COVID, any flu bug, you're supposed to be immune to it. If you catch it again, it doesn't last very long, a day or two, because you have the antibodies in your thing. But one thing I've noticed with COVID is that you get the same strand over and over and over, and it lasts almost as long. You get over it faster, but the same symptoms happen that you go through. And so every time, and I go to Walmart once a week or once every 2 weeks. So even in the summertime, I'm constantly, and I'm like, this is designed, man. Either they spray their food for the people who pick up with the virus, or this virus was designed to make sure that everybody gets it over and over and over and over. Because they're trying to, obviously, same company who was looking into creating the virus is the same company, weirdly, who created the antivirus that they give you in a shot, right? So I don't mess around with that. I have never gotten a shot, and I won't, because I believe in the natural immunity. And people go, well, they're just going to kill you one day. Thanks for your negative energy, but I reflect that back onto you, right? We humans survived on this earth to be almost 9 billion of us from a time when we were about 140,000 people without pharmaceutical grade shots. For the last 77,000 years, without the last 4 years of shots. We made it this far. What makes you think we would have died without the shot in the last 4 years as an entire species? Is there a time in history where that happened, so that you can go backwards and say almost the entire planet died from this disease? Right? Oh, the Black Death of over in Europe, the bubonic plague. Weirdly, the angel of death, as you currently know it, the Grim Reaper, as you currently know it, comes from the time of the plague, where there was someone dressed in a long robe looking like the Grim Reaper, holding a sickle, which is what you use to reap wheat with, and was walking the fields and using the sickle, and instead of reaping the fields and cutting down the grain, was spraying a green spray out of the sickle onto the grain. And everywhere where that person showed up spraying this, all the people came down with the bubonic plague, and most of them died. You can look this up. Weird. Were they all delusional and saw? So who's that guy in the field dressed in black, and what's that green mist that he sprayed? I don't know. Let's go and find out. And when they ran out there, he disappears and runs away. And then he shows up in the next town. And then people over there said, the people who survived, this guy showed up and was spraying this thing. So they called him the Grim Reaper, because wherever he showed up, people got the plague and almost everybody died. Yet it's the same story, that 100% of the time where there were survivors, that person showed up 3 days before everyone started coming down sick. 100% of the time, 100% the same, 100% the same thing that happened, the same green spray that sprayed across the mist in the weirdly, oddly close to the creeping death, green, misty thing that came creeping into Egypt when Moses was talking about the creeping death, and that everybody had to put lamb's blood painted on their door 5,000 years ago. And then 1,100 years ago, the same thing happened over in Europe, only this time they saw the Reaper out there doing it. And a bunch of people died. A human figure dressed in black with a hood, spraying something over the crops of food, and then everybody got sick and died. So tell me how that was naturally happening in the universe, and that the Black Plague 1,100 years ago was not, in fact, orchestrated by somebody who was evil, who was poisoning food with a plague. Oh, because they didn't have the technology to make a plague to kill people. Yet you can go back to Roman times from 4,500 years ago, and Japan from 3,500 years ago, and China from 4,000 years ago. And you can read stories of them using plagues to infect people and kill people. Or the United States of America, when you had a guy who was going around with blankets paid for by the American government and giving blankets to Native Americans, and he and the blankets were infected with smallpox and other diseases, that when he gave it to the Native Americans, they all got it, and it was killing them off by the hundreds of thousands, and he was immune to it, so he didn't die. That happened in real life in the United States to eradicate the Native Americans off the land in the United States and Canada, paid for by the American government, until one person heard about him, and they were on a wagon train taking their cattle from one part of Texas to the north to sell them. And the guy came riding towards them. They did a movie about this, actually, and added it to the movie, where they found out who the guy was, and he shot the fucker and killed him dead, because he knew that that person was poisoning Native Americans and killing them all off. And that's when it stopped, because he never returned. So then the American government just started giving them shit food that was poisoning them and killing them. Just saying, you can look the stuff up. So biowarfare is something that they've been using forever, but yet it didn't happen over there. And there's some people that are looking into the Spanish flu that happened here in the United States 100 years ago. Now that COVID is hit, and there's the idea that COVID was manufactured, because the Spanish flu oddly happened exactly the way COVID happened. And so there's some people now reopening that case as if it was a case of mass murder on the earth. Look it up. Just saying. Right? Elderly people who were alive during the Spanish plague are the only ones to survive the last pandemic without any issues. And just so you know, you can look this up too. This is not me making this up. If you have European descent from your mother and your father, and you can trace that lineage back to Europe during the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, you're immune to AIDS. That's scientifically proven. I read that in a doctor's one of those magazines. It's like Science Daily, but it was for medical. I was sitting in a doctor's office back in 2012 or 2013. I was sitting in my doctor's office and I was waiting for my doctor and I was bored and there was magazines and I happened to pick them up and start thumbing through there and there was a study done about AIDS. And so I read it. What is this? And I read it. Here in California, in San Francisco, back in the 80s, there was a guy who was gay and his partner died of AIDS, but he didn't. And then he got another partner and that partner died of AIDS, but he still didn't. Then he got another partner and that partner got AIDS and was dying. And he went to the doctor and said, I don't understand what's happening because I've had multiple partners who have had AIDS and they're dying, but I'm not sick. I don't know what's going on and why I'm not sick. And the doctor said, that's a good question. Let's figure that out. So the doctor started running tests on him to find out what's going on. And they tested him and he said, well, you have AIDS. He said, what do you mean? I'm not dying. And he said, no, you're not. That's very curious. But you have the virus. And you can infect anyone with it. And chances are you're infecting your partners, but I don't know if that's whether you got it from them or if they got it from you. Because they're dead now, so we don't know. But you have it, and it's not killing you. I need to figure this out. So he figured it out. And when he looked into it, he realized that this person was immune to it. And so he was like, why are you immune to it? And is there other people that are immune to it? And it took them until the 90s and going into the 2000s, and this is why it was published. Okay, so by 2012, they had looked into it. And when they looked into it and figured out what was going on, they realized that the marker that he had in his DNA was given to him by his both mother and father's parents that came out of Europe who survived the bubonic plague, the Black Death. He had the same marker. And so they started testing other people and they found that only people who were both of their parents came out of Europe and that their parents and parents' parents or grandparents survived the bubonic plague and had the marker handed down to them of what happened. When the bubonic plague happened, everybody was dying. And then spontaneously, this is chaos theory, spontaneously, all of the people in Europe became immune to the plague and didn't die from it. And they've looked into that and found that out. So now that they're looking into this, they went back and confirmed that. That suggests that AIDS was based on people who did not have that marker. So they said, does that mean that it was done naturally in history, that it just so happens? And they said, but the only way that could happen is that AIDS has to be a form of the bubonic plague. That couldn't have changed into what it was. So they started looking into that. That was when the whistleblowers came out here in the United States saying that AIDS was actually created in a laboratory. And those whistleblowers went to jail. Barack Obama put them in jail when he was the president. And a woman who was one of those whistleblowers, when she got out of prison, she told the world about it. And she said, I was working in a gain of research laboratory under Anthony Fauci. And I was one of the people that blew the whistle because mad cow disease, I'm the one who gave that and created that to be able to have humans catch it. While working on that, we came up with a cure for AIDS based on this person's research. And Anthony Fauci took it from her and squashed it. So she came out and said, I think he had something to do with the advent of AIDS back in the 80s. And they put her in jail. Barack Obama put her in jail over it. Then when she got out of jail, she blew the whistle and wrote a book about it and went on the tour, and they canceled her off the internet and they tried to shut her up, saying that AIDS was created in a laboratory designed because who owns this planet and thinks they own this planet? Rich European oligarchs who believe they're royalty of Europe. So they designed a disease that they were immune to, so they would never die from it. And if you have those markers because your people happen to have come from there, you will never get it. And if you do get it, you'll never die from it. You won't even get a cold. You don't even know you have it. You become asymptomatic. That's what they call that. Okay? And people still out there right now will listen to me saying this and they'll go, he's making it up. You can look up the research, man. Look it up. There's people out there that'll tell you this. So Anthony Fauci was working on research, and when she came up with the cure for AIDS, he shut her up, took it from her, and threatened to fire her if she talked about it, and he took her cure, and it's never been seen since. She tried to tell the world that. Barack Obama put her in jail for trying to tell the world that, and when she was let out of jail, she continued to try and tell the world that, and they discredited her, and that was in 2016, 2017, and then in 2019, at that, in fact, wait, here, let me go back. At that exact moment in 2016, when Barack Obama put her into jail, Anthony Fauci was in charge of gain of function research inside the United States, working on novel coronavirus. And Barack Obama said, we're not supposed to be doing that in the United States. That's against the law and a felony in the United States. We need to stop that. How did he know about that? Oh, let's say there was a person working at that gain of function research laboratory who blew the whistle that he just shut up and put into prison. So then they moved the laboratory out of the United States. Guess where all of the gain of function research went from that laboratory orchestrated by one Anthony Fauci and Barack Obama? It became a joint research center in Wuhan, China. Wait a minute, what? You can look this up. So then come forward in time to 2019, and there's this virus that somehow leaks out of this Wuhan laboratory that the American government paid for. Oopsie. No, it was a bat, just like monkeypox was because some African guy was having sex with a monkey, buying that one. They said the same thing about AIDS, by the way, that some African guy was having sex with a monkey, and that's how AIDS got started. And then monkeypox was an African guy having sex with a monkey. And then the bat over in China was, well, it was somebody eating a bat, or a bat bit them. Weirdly, that it happened in like a mile from the gain of function research laboratory that was working on novel coronavirus that came from the United States and left the country when a whistleblower said Anthony Fauci stole the cure for AIDS and might have had something to do with inventing AIDS 40 years earlier. And then who did we put in charge of the coronavirus in the United States? Anthony Fauci, the guy who filed a patent for the cure for coronavirus in 2016 before coronavirus was a thing. The reason why it's called COVID-19 is because in the year 2019 was when it was identified as a virus. So how could he have applied for a patent on a vaccine in 2016 for a virus that didn't exist in nature until 3 years later? Just saying. Just saying. Okay, let me get done with that. and start talking about the law of one again for a few minutes before we go down the road of that religion any further. Because I'm sure that there's some of you out there that are like, this guy is insane and he's just making this shit up. Do your research and look into it yourself. Assume that I'm lying about all of this. Assume that everything I just said to you is untrue, and look it up on a information website that is not Google, and start doing your own research, because it's out there. Because I've done the research, it's out there. Look that stuff up for yourself. Go down that rabbit hole on your own. Let's continue with Ra.
This entity therefore must needs meditate and consciously, moment by moment, accept the self and its limitations which have been placed for the very purpose of bringing this entity to the precise tuning we are using. Further, having learned to radiate acceptance and love without expecting return, this entity now must balance this by learning to accept the gifts of love and acceptance of others which this instrument feels some discomfort in accepting. These two balancing workings will aid this entity in the release from the distortion called pain. The limitations are, to a great extent, fixed. 60.9 Questioner, is the fact that the instrument already was consciously aware of this the reason that the first distortion was not in force in making it impossible for you to communicate this to us? Ra, I am Ra. This is not only correct for this entity which has been consciously aware of these learn/teachings for some of your years, but also true of each of the support group. The possibility of some of this information being offered was not there until this session. 60.10 Questioner, thank you. When you spoke in the last session of energizing shocks coming from the top of the pyramid, did you mean that these came at intervals rather than steadily? Ra, I am Ra. These energizing shocks come at discrete intervals but come very, very close together in a properly functioning pyramid shape. In one whose dimensions have gone awry, the energy will not be released with regularity or in quanta, as you may perhaps better understand our meaning. 60.11 Questioner, the next statement that I make may or may not be enlightening to me in my investigation of the pyramid energy, but it has occurred to me that the so-called effect in the so-called Bermuda Triangle is possibly due to the large pyramid beneath the water which releases this third spiral at discrete and varying intervals, and when other entities or craft are in the vicinity of this, it creates a situation where they change space/time continuum in some way.
I just mentioned this. I didn't realize that was in this session. I just mentioned this at the beginning of the show tonight, right? So let me replay that again, where Carla is talking back in 1981 about the Bermuda Triangle, and Ra is speaking through Carla, talking about the Bermuda Triangle, and we had not discovered this pyramid down there under the water until 2016. Let me rewind this here. We'll let that play. I didn't realize it was in this session. Let me hold on a second here. Let me get over here and I'll back this up and listen to what Ra's saying here.
Ra, I am Ra. This is not only correct for this entity which has been consciously aware of these learn/teachings for some of your years, but also true of each of the support group. The possibility of some of this information being offered was not there until this session. 60.10 Questioner, thank you. When you spoke in the last session of energizing shocks coming from the top of the pyramid, did you mean that these came at intervals rather than steadily? Ra, I am Ra. These energizing shocks come at discrete intervals but come very, very close together in a properly functioning pyramid shape. In one whose dimensions have gone awry, the energy will not be released with regularity or in quanta, as you may perhaps better understand our meaning. 60.11 Questioner, the next statement that I make may or may not be enlightening to me in my investigation of the pyramid energy, but it has occurred to me that the so-called effect in the so-called Bermuda Triangle is possibly due to the large pyramid beneath the water which releases this third spiral at discrete and varying intervals, and when other entities or craft are in the vicinity of this, it creates a situation where they change space/time continuum in some way.
Okay, so to answer, you guys are talking there. Penny said, ouch, my left ear is ringing bad. And Cassie said, my left ear was also ringing about 10 minutes ago. Usually when you get that in the left side, it's usually nefarious energy. It's been in the last few days, that's been happening to me. And I'm like, wow. So there is something that's going on. Celeste and I, we used to talk about this because this would happen at intervals where you would have what they call witch wars, where you would have people who are evil get together and go after people that are in service to others in that community and try to do damage to them or screw their lives up. You have to realize that the Orion Crusaders, or any organized group that is in service to self, that is, especially the Anunnaki, what you know as the Anunnaki, or the Orion Crusaders, or the Illuminati, or the Bilderbergers, or the Skull and Bones. Those people do that on purpose, and Ra talks about this, how they project into your mind gloom and doom into your dreams and otherwise. And so when you're getting that left ear that's going, ooh, doctors will go, oh, that's because you're high blood pressure or something's going on there. And here's, take this medicine. You're going to be on this for the rest of your life. Take this drug. Because they don't want you thinking about it in any other way. But the left side is usually negative. That's the devil on your left shoulder, and the angel on your right shoulder. All positive energy that you're going to get from your higher self, from your guides, from communication from the other side, is always going to come in from the left side, the right. And it doesn't matter whether you're right-handed or left-handed. That's the way the human body and soul is done, so that's universal, because the enlightenment is universal. And that, so the stuff that's coming in, if you're left side of your ear, that's usually somebody who's focusing negative energy on you. Doesn't necessarily mean it's an assassin, or it's the devil, or it's a demon. It could just be somebody who's talking shit about you in the background, or somebody that you know. Or part of the training that I had gotten was, my father would tell me, part of the druid training and shaman training is when you identify that there's a tone that's happening either left side or right side, run through concepts in your mind of who it could be. And when you start going, if it's somebody negative, start going, okay, somebody is walking on my grave, or somebody's talking smack about me. Who is it that doesn't like me, that would be talking shit about me right about now? And you kind of go through, who the people are that don't like you, that would talk shit about you. So you think of the person's name in your head. And if the tone continues, it's not that person. Go to the next person, the next person, the next person, the next person. And when you think of a person's name and that tone stops, there's a very good possibility, a 99.9% possibility, that's the person who was actually giving you that energy. On the other side of the coin, if you get a tone in your right ear, the same thing. Is that mom? Is that dad? Is that my husband or my wife? Whatever, right? Is that my brother? Is that, you think of that concept, the second you say a name, you're going to see that tone's going to quit. If it starts again, right, wait, somebody's still now talking about me. Is it the same person? You think of them first. If it immediately stops, it's that person. If it doesn't, you go, well, wait a minute, or maybe they're talking to so-and-so, and then it stops, call them. Okay? If you can do that, call that person who you think it is when you start realizing, my ear was ringing, and when I thought of this person, it stopped. Sometimes before you do that, your phone will ring, or they'll text you, and you'll be like, wow. Or you call them and they go, were your ears ringing? I was just talking about you. Yes, my ears were ringing. Why do you think that's a saying? Was your ears burning? Was your ears just ringing? Because I was just talking about you. Yes, my ear was ringing, and that's why I called you. And then they go, oh, yeah, all right, whatever, man. But where did that saying come from? Because some people feel it is heat, and some people hear tone. So were your ears burning? Well, we were just talking about you. Were your ears ringing? We were just talking about you. That's an actual saying, because it actually happens if you're paying attention and you're aware of the skill that you have. Okay? So when that happens, you need to, I'm giving you guys some shaman training now and some druid training. When you have a tone, if it goes from back and forth, that could be two people arguing about you, and one person is going, I hate that person, I hate her, I hate him, he's an asshole, and I can't, and then the other person's like, what is your problem? I love that person, and I don't understand. That's what you'll find if it goes, right? But then there's always a possibility that you got something going on, and that it could be something to do with your blood pressure. So you got to kind of look at that scenario as well, if it's something that consistently happens. So don't just discount that. I'm not a doctor, so don't just discount that, but don't assume that that's what it is at first, because we naturally have that ability, and those tones actually happen. And to what degree, how loud they become, whether you hear it muffled with the sound of your ear, it becomes so loud that it goes, you hear the tone, and then all of a sudden it feels like somebody does this, and the tone, you can tell the difference. I would have to work with you guys individually to give you the nuances of that, but I'm pretty sure that Celeste knows some about that too, because we talked about that before, I think, but it was a few years ago when we talked about that. So I'm pretty sure that Celeste knows about that as well. But you guys should be aware of that. Negative energy is always your left side. Positive energy is always your right side. So if you're hearing and people are talking to you as a medium or your guides, and it comes from the right side, that's a positive energy. You can't fake it. Someone evil can't whisper in your right ear, a ghost or a demon. This just doesn't work that way. Okay? You need to realize that about the universe. It comes from your left. It's negative energy. It's a lie. It's trying to give you doom and gloom, trying to give you doubt. If you really pay attention to your ego, it comes from the left side. Even the thought process. So what we would do to train for this is put on headphones and have the ability to change what side of the ear that you can do that, where you can mute one of your earbuds and become aware of where that sound is in your head. Because if you put it in here and the sound is equally on both sides, it actually sounds like it's coming in the center of your head because you're hearing it through both ears. But if you do just one earbud, you get used to the idea that it's only in that ear. But that is only the audio tone that's coming into the ear. So you have to get used to the idea of a tone that's coming into your ear that's being started in your ear. Okay, that is not something you're hearing go into your ear. And that's that tone that you hear. So you have to that's what they do when they put the headphones on you and they test your ears, and you have to decide which side that comes from. You become very acutely aware at that moment that I'm supposed to figure out what side that tone is on. Okay, so you have to learn that about yourself. And if you're already realizing that came on my left ear or my right ear, you're already well onto it. And then you just have to associate it with that. Ego is left, conscience, not consciousness, conscience is right. So it's either your guides, yourself, your conscience, or somebody trying to talk to you as a medium. You're going to always hear it from the side. That's why you see psychics a lot, and they'll turn their head. They'll turn their head this way and kind of cock like they're listening. That's why they're doing that, because that's where the energy comes from. So if you see them starting to go to the left side, be a little wary of that, because the left side, unless they're just, because when I talk, sometimes I look as I'm channeling. So if you get to know the nuances of a psychic and what they're doing. But you can tell when somebody's hearing something in their left ear, unless they have something in their left ear. And if they don't have a earpiece in their left ear, or you don't, and you're hearing a tone in its left side, then it's nefarious energy trying to cast doubt for some reason in you. Yeah, right? Pay attention to people who always have earbuds in and what ear it is. Well, see, I have hearing problem, so when I use one earbud, or so I put it on my left side, because I actually do that because this ear hears better with an earbud than this one does. So I've always put an earbud, or whatever. If I'm playing a video game and I put one thing, it's always in my left side, because my right ear hears better and I can concentrate on that. So some people are like your right or left eye dominant when you're shooting a weapon. Some people are right and left ear dominant as well. However, you should kind of pay attention, because Celeste is right, that you have some people who, well, some of it has to do with whether you're right-handed or left-handed. If you had a cord back in the day, if you're left-handed, you didn't want the cord in the way of your left hand to do stuff, so you would put it in your right ear. But nowadays, earbuds don't have either. So if they only use one earbud, you should kind of pay attention to it. I agree with what Celeste is saying. Use that as a dyslexic physics, right? Use that as a kind of a guide to a personality too, right? If you see that people are doing that, you be aware of it. Always be aware of it. Celeste is absolutely right. Be aware of it, and then determine individually whether a person's doing it and why they're doing it, right? So yeah, you have to look into that. But you could be left ear or right ear dominant, just like left eye, right eye dominant. Some people who are left-handed or right-eye dominant. Some people who are right-handed or left-eye dominant when it comes to shooting a weapon. And you have to learn that. And anybody who's teaching you how to fire a weapon will try to figure out whether you're right-handed or left-hand dominant. Because if you're left-hand dominant and you're right-handed and you're trying to look through a scope with your right eye, you're going to miss the target. You're never going to be as accurate because you're left-eye dominant. And it's easy to figure out whether you're left-eye or right-eye dominant. It really is, or if you're truly ambidextrous. It honestly is. First thing you do is go, okay, are you right-handed or left-handed? Right? Start with that. Person says, I'm right-handed. Okay. So what you want to do is, here's a dot, right? Hold up a dot right here, right? Or put my finger up. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to point with your right hand at this finger. Right. And so you have to, it's hard to do here like this, but you can do it. If I center this, you can actually do it. If you center yourself on the screen where you're seeing me, and then if you're right-handed, take your right hand and point at the tip of my finger. And then when you have your hand there, close your right eye and see if your finger is pointed directly at the center of my finger. If it's not, open that right eye and close your left eye and see which one is pointed closer to the center of my finger. If neither are, and they're both slightly off, you're ambidextrous and you're not right eye dominant or left eye dominant. But otherwise, one of them is going to be the one that you're going to be pointing at, and the other one's not. Okay, and that's what eye you're dominant with. So you could be right-handed and left eye dominant. If you will look at the movie Lethal Weapon. In that movie, what's his name? Riggs's partner, I don't remember what his name was, the actor that played the part. He was right-handed, but he was left-eye dominant. His character was that way. And you saw him when he was serious and wanted to shoot somebody, he would hold his gun, tuck his right chin into his right shoulder, and look down the barrel of his gun with his left eye. Because he was left-eye dominant, he knew it. So when he got serious and needed to pick somebody off or be very accurate, he tilted over to where his left eye was looking down the barrel of the gun and pulled the trigger, because his character was left-eye dominant but right-handed. There was another movie with Nicolas Cage where he was a combat pilot in a helicopter in the military, and they showed you that there because you had to have a targeting array on your head and your helmet, and he was having problems, and the instructor finally said, are you right-eye dominant or left-eye dominant? He taught him that, and they had to figure it out, and they found out that he was left-eye dominant but he was right-handed. So they switched the gear so that he had the targeting array that covered his left eye, and then he was accurate with the weapons of the helicopter. But that's a real thing in real life, that you have to do that. Your ears are the same. One's more dominant. You feel more comfortable listening to stuff in one ear than you do the other ear. And when you're in a combat situation where you have to hear other people talking to you on a radio in real life, the one that you're dominant in is the one that you need to be able to hear other people in, or you'll ignore them. And they also found out that men hear women's voices in combat better than they hear a man's voice. And it has something to do with psychology of mom being the nurturer. So that in aircraft and tanks and anywhere that you're wearing a helmet and your computer, there are female voices now in the American military. I don't know if it's the world is that way, but in the American military, it's that way. Because men will listen to a woman's voice. They'll overhear, no matter what's going on, they'll hear the woman's voice over, no matter what the explosions are, guns going off, bombs going off, they'll still hear the woman's voice, whether they realize it or not, they'll react to it. So women will talk in your ear and tell you what to do, because you'll be more apt to do it than another man screaming at you, telling you to get up and move forward. That's actually just psychology of the human species. Sorry, I know you guys didn't want to hear about that, but that has to do with positive and negative energy, masculine and feminine energy of the Kundalini. Masculine energy, being male dominated, and feminine being more nurturing. And the way we're built, we listen to our mother. Our mother is loving and nurturing and caring, so we hear her voice over our father's voice, who, when he's yelling at you, you're in trouble. So you don't want to hear dad's voice, but you want to hear your mom's voice. And in combat, I hate to mention this, but in combat, when guys get shot and they're dying, they don't call for their daddy. Okay? They call for their mom.
Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. Yes. 60.12 Questioner. Then this third spiral has an energizing effect that, if strong enough, will actually change the space/time continuum. Is there a use or value to this type of change? Ra. I am Ra. In the hands of one of fifth density or above, this particular energy may be tapped in order to communicate information, love, or light across what you would consider vast distances, but which with this energy may be considered transdimensional leaps. Also, there is the possibility of travel using this formation of energy. 60.13 Questioner. Would this travel be the instantaneous type having to do with not the slingshot effect, but the effect used primarily by sixth density entities? Or is it the slingshot effect that you are talking about? Ra. I am Ra. The former effect is that of which we speak. You may note that as one learns the, shall we say, understandings or disciplines of the personality, each of these configurations of prana is available to the entity without the aid of this shape. One may view the pyramid at Giza as metaphysical training wheels. 60.14 Questioner. Then is the large underwater pyramid off the Florida coast one of the balancing pyramids that are constructed or some other social memory complex, and if so, which one? Ra. I am Ra. That pyramid of which you speak was one whose construction was aided by sixth density entities of a social memory complex working with Atlanteans prior to our working with the, as you call them, Egyptians. 60.15 Questioner. You mentioned working with one other group other than the Egyptians.
Atlanteans. Okay. So the Atlanteans were mentioned there, that there was a group of people working with the Atlanteans from the sixth dimension that helped create that specific pyramidal complex that is now underwater. That's how far back it goes. Because it's underwater, that means pre-deluge, pre-flood, post-ice age, pre-ice age, pre-deluge. So we're talking, and Atlantean. So now we're talking when? 77,000 years ago? Talking more than 12,000 years ago, that's for sure. Because Ra came here 12,000 years ago and worked with the Egyptians. So this is prior to that. So is this the post, pre-dynastic? If it's pre-dynastic, we're looking at like more than 70,000 years ago. But chances are it's the people, the Atlanteans. When were they here? Were they here after the 77,000 year mark? Yes, because we know that the Romans knew about Atlantis. And so did the Celts. They called it High Brazil. You English know it as High Brazil. And that was out in the Atlantic Ocean. Wait, what? Where is the Bermuda Triangle? Bermuda, where's that? The Atlantic Ocean, close to shore here for the Americas. And where was High Brazil? A little further towards the east, towards Ireland and England. According to the Romans, it was out past the Pillars of Hercules, which puts it in the Atlantic Ocean. So what if the people that lived there on Atlantis before it sank under the ocean, or the ocean rose up above it and consumed it? What if that group of people had a civilization that was bigger than just one city and built a pyramid somewhere close to the Americas, say off the Bermuda Island coast of the United States? I'm just saying. Let's continue.
Who were they? Ra. I am Ra. These entities were those of South America. We divided our forces to work within these two cultures. 60.16 Questioner. The pyramid shape then, as I understand it, was deemed by your social memory complex at that time to be of paramount importance as, shall I say, a physical training aid for spiritual development. At this particular time in the evolution of our planet, it seems that you place little or no emphasis on this shape. Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. It is our honor/duty to attempt to remove the distortions that the use of this shape has caused in the thinking of your peoples and in the activities of some of your entities. We do not deny that such shapes are efficacious, nor do we withhold the general gist of this efficacy. However, we wish to offer our understanding, limited though it is, that contrary to our naive beliefs many thousands of years ago, the optimum shape for initiation does not exist. Let us expand upon this point. When we were aided by sixth density entities during our own third density experiences, we, being less bellicose in the extreme, found this teaching to be of help. In our naivete in third density, we had not developed the interrelationships of your barter or money system and power. We were, in fact, a more philosophical third density planet than your own, and our choices of polarity were much more centered about the, shall we say, understanding of sexual energy transfers and the appropriate relationships between self and other self. We spent a much larger portion of our space/time working with the unmanifested being. In this less complex atmosphere, it was quite instructive to have this learn/teaching device, and we benefited without the distortions we found occurring among your peoples. We have recorded these differences meticulously in the great record of creation, that such naivete shall not be necessary again. At this space/time we may best serve you, we believe, by stating that the pyramid for meditation, along with other rounded and arched or pointed circular shapes, is of help to you. However, it is our observation that due to the complexity of influences upon the unmanifested being at this space/time nexus among your planetary peoples, it is best that the progress of the mind/body/spirit complex take place without, as you call them, training aids, because when using a training aid, an entity then takes upon itself the law of responsibility for the quickened or increased rate of learn/teaching.
Notice he used the word quicken, right? I talk about the quickening. Most people don't even know about that. It was only mentioned here in like Highlander, the movie in 92 or 89 or whenever that was, where he was talking about the quickening. They don't talk about that very much here. Most people don't. And he just talked about that. Ra did. So let's continue here. And we're going to end at the end of this session. And then we'll or not at the end of the session, but at the end of this question. And then next week, we'll start back at the beginning of this question because of what we'll talk about. And then we'll continue. I'll talk about it a little bit more before we go. But I want to then reiterate this next session. So next week, I'll start whatever this question is. We'll start back at the beginning of it.
If this greater understanding, if we may use this misnomer, is not put into practice in the moment-by-moment experience of the entity, then the usefulness of the training aid becomes negative. 60.17 question.
Okay, so we'll do 60.16 is where we'll start next week. So I wanted to bring up that this is one of those rare occasions where you hear Ra talking about them when they were in third dimension, and that they had people from the sixth density coming back as wanderers to help them. And but he's giving the disclaimer, when we were in our third density beingness, we did not have the barter system and monetary system that you have, because we didn't have the bellicosity, we didn't have the affinity for violence and aggression that you guys have. That they were more spiritual and going down the road of, and then of course talking about the sexual right energy, which is the energy of the Christos, that some religions on this earth did look into, specifically the Celts, with the Wiccans, the pagans, the Druids, looking into, and then the Native Americans over here with their religion that was very similar to the Southern Vikings over of Europe, very similar. In fact, so much so that the shamanistic ways here are very similar to Wiccan and Druid ways there in Europe, very similar, scarily similar in their respects, even though they were completely different societal structures. But that they, as Ra, were not in any way the same. Yes, Celeste said divine guidance is important. Absolutely, that's part of the ecosystem. So they were saying we weren't as violent as you guys, and they said that's part of their mistake in giving the information 12,000 years ago to the Egyptian priests, that they didn't realize that some of them, 14% of the population, might be evil because they didn't have that many that were that way on their planet. They didn't have their population was about 1% or 2% that was in service to self. So everybody was mostly in service to others, 98 to 99% of their population at any one given time. So they made that mistake, not realizing. And so this is why you hear Ra saying, we wanted to make sure that this would never happen again. So they stayed here, and that's why they're still here to help. However, to Celeste's point, when she said divine guidance is important, People, when they go through the ascension here, say, and they start waking up, or they do wake up and they realize what's going on here in this ecosystem, sometimes the first thing that happens to you is that you reach the level of, well, this is an ecosystem. This yin and yang is supposed to be this way, so it doesn't really matter if I do anything because this is the way it's supposed to be. So that realization is akin to learning to tap into some Akashic records and not realizing that you're not tapping into your own, that you're tapping into someone else's and thinking you were that person in history, until you then push past that and realize, oh, I was tapping into someone else's Akashic records just then, and I was just tapping into the record that it shows it as now as me. So when you play it back, like playing back a DVD, if it's in first person, you see it as that person. Well, who is that person? Well, it must be me if you're doing it in this kind of avatar form. So you have to realize that as you start to ascend, you hit this stage of, this is an ecosystem and this is supposed to happen exactly the way it is. So some people then shut down and go, well, then I don't need to help. And I'm not going to, because I'm not going to make a difference, because this is an ecosystem that's supposed to be this way. And you're supposed to push past that and realize that it's either you are in fact waking up to this, and then you're now the adult, so you kind of have an obligation to help the children, or you push past that and come to the realization of, oh, I'm actually from a higher plane, that I've come back down here to help these people. And sometimes that happens, and people then ascend to that and they go, oh, I'm actually from a higher level and I've come down here to help. That's called a wanderer. Some people call it, and they think that it's a walk-in. It's far more rare than they think it is. And some of those people have gotten the idea that they're a walk-in and they're not. They're actually a wanderer. I'd love to talk to them and go, who was the soul that was in the body, and what day did you come into this body? Were you born as a child in this body? Then you're a wanderer. Or was it when this person was 17 years of age and you walked in? 10 years of age, 8 years of age. When did you walk in? Because if you're a walk-in, you know that. Okay, and if you don't, there's a good possibility you're actually just a wanderer or someone who is just awake now. And you think you're a walk-in because you're awake. Therefore, I can't be from here. And that's part of the ascension. Again, some people think that until you realize, oh, I'm from a higher plane and I came down here. Then you go to a stage where you go, I'm tired. I've been here for a long time. I don't want to do this anymore. We all go through it. It's the same as when you're here and you don't know that, and you're like, I'm fucking tired. I've been here. I don't know. I have just this idea that I've been here a long time, and maybe this is a matrix and we're just stuck and we're going over and over and over, and I want it to end. Same thing happens when you realize you came from a higher plane. Happens to you all the time. Your ego will tell you that, especially when you first wake up from a nap or from being asleep all night. Your ego will jump on anything that you can use against you. It'll go, oh, scary. We've been here for 10,000 years. It sucks. We need to stop. And I'm just going to give it up. I think that sometimes. Everyone does. Everybody you talk to does. But then you have to realize that, why did I come back? Celeste brought that up and said that really, really definitively, right? Let me go back here and then continue. But you're right. Oh, yeah, now you guys are talking. You even went past that, what you had said. Okay, so divine help is divine guidance. Here it is, right? My screen is scrolling up and down. I'm trying to scroll it down, and it's scrolling up and down. Your divine guidance is important. So you have to realize, I've talked about this and I teach this, you have to realize that if you realize I'm a wanderer, you're not just doing this for them. Okay, you're not just doing this for them. You didn't just come here to help them. You came here to be the example for them. You also came here for you. You came here for you. What you're doing from the sixth density or the fifth, depending on where you're coming from, part of your self-sacrifice, being in service to others, is doing this task. So you didn't just sit up there one day and go, oh, those people need my help, I'm going to go help, and I'm just here because I'm helping. there's a very good possibility that you're doing that because you volunteered to, because it's a course you're taking for yourself to learn. So you're not just coming here to help them. You're doing this because this is the class you're in there. Okay? And this is part of your ascension as well as theirs. You're serving as an example so that when these people who are here for the first time in 3D get to 4D, 5D, 6D, some of them will come back. They don't know it yet. It's just like when you're a kid and you tell your child, or when you're a parent, you tell your child, don't touch that, you're going to burn your hand. The child doesn't understand why you're saying that until they burn their hand. When you say eat your vegetables is good for you, I don't want to eat my vegetables. You need the vitamins and minerals that are in your vegetables. Eat those. I don't want to eat those, and I can't wait until I'm old enough and I'm never going to eat vegetables. Brush your teeth. I don't want to brush my teeth and floss my teeth. You need to do that or you're going to lose your teeth, and you're really going to hate it if you lose your teeth. You don't know what you're talking about. And then when you become an adult, all of a sudden, and when you have kids, you find yourself saying the same shit to your kids that your parents said to you, and you go, oh my God, I'm becoming my mom. Oh my God, I'm becoming my dad. There's nothing wrong with that. You are now the person helping that child and serving as the example for that child, and you have a responsibility to be so, and you have a responsibility to be a responsible one. Why? Because someone did it for you. So you're doing it for someone else. We pay it forward. So this isn't just for them. This is for you. It's for them so that when they get here, there's going to be a 10% of them who are in service to others, who will then volunteer to come back here to help people, not just here, but in other places around the universe where third dimensional people need it. So like Celeste said, it's vital, it's important, because it's part of the grand scheme, the grandiose scheme of the ecosystem that is not just third dimensional ecosystem. Okay. So then Cassie said, Leo, I didn't miss that, Cassie. I just didn't get to it yet. You were the next thing. Leo, does Ra go into what they meant by using sexual energy properly? Yes. But we know about that here and that's going to be next week. We'll talk about that there, but I'll talk about it now because you've asked the question. And then you'll hear it again from Ra next week. Because what they're referring to in the sexual right energy is the Christ energy. Okay? But you'll see that when Ra talks about it, it's going to be presented in a way that is 40 years ago average knowledge for the human consumption. This is why I interpret this, because I can give you more information that Ra couldn't give you 40 years ago. Because the entire earth was not ready for certain information to be told, but it was told in a way, just like the Bible, when you read stuff that Jesus said and says to the people, you're not going to understand this. This is for people way in the future. And then people in the future now say, we're in the end times. How do we know that? Because we're starting to understand some of the stuff that Jesus said that we should only be able to understand if we're way far in the future. So we must be in that time that he was referring to. Can't be, shut up, sit down, okay? So what Ra is referring to is the sexual right energy is the energy that is the Christos, the Christ oil in your body, and transmuting that in a positive, not a negative, okay? There's other times, and this is if you knew about, and Celeste could tell you about this as well, if you know about Wiccan, Druidism, paganism, that religion still teaches sexual right energy to be able to build energy, to cast spells, to use that energy through sex. And if you don't think that that's a real thing, ask any prize fighter on the face of the earth when they're training for a fight. Ask the men that they are abstaining from sex. They are not spending that energy, no jerking off, no having sex until after the fight. Why? Because that builds up an energy within the male body of masculine energy that does not get expended into the female that they want him to have for the possibility to fight. When you go in the military, the same thing happens. They used to give you what was over in America called saltpeter in your food that would lower your sexual appetite so that you kept the energy in your body until so that you would go through boot camp and have more vigor. And then when you started eating regular food, you would all of a sudden be just horny as a toad and run out on furlough and have sex with everything that could move because you didn't realize that was turned off by medication in the American military. And they do that in almost every country. Now they have other things. It's not called saltpeter. Now they have other medicines that do the same thing. That's how they knew to be able to give you medicine in the other respect that we call the blue pill, that would enhance your sexual activity as a male, because they were giving you medicine that was taking it away. So when people design something, they design both ends of it. They don't just go after one, they go after the other. Why? Because they can make money off of it. Okay. So Raw gets into that and talks about that, but it is in fact, that's why you hear, like in the video that I shared a few times in the chat, where it starts with, what's his name, the comedian, he says, do you know about sexual alchemy, sexual right energy? And everybody thinks, oh, well, it must be something that is going to be designed to so you have better sex. And that's not what that is talking about, but it is a sexual right energy, because there is an off time that we don't talk about too much that's not during that time, when you can build up that energy and use that energy in a sexual right, in a way that is not going to interfere with the illumination. So what I focused on in my book is just that personal energy, and what I've taught so far to you guys is the personal energy of that one time a month. There's also other times of the month where there's energy that you can build up. Rick is kind of toying with that, and he was when he went, what is it, 17, 18, 19 days without tossing off. That builds up an energy that you then, when you release it, is a more euphoric energy. So you have to give it up at the right time, and then give it up at the wrong time as well, but expend it at the right time that's not going to inhibit the ascension with the oil that goes up and down. And you learn to balance that to where you can use that to your advantage. I just haven't talked about that and didn't talk about it in my book. So Raw will talk about that next week. We'll cover that next week, but it's going to be in a 40-year-old terminology, and I'll interpret that more when he gets into those details. That's why I stopped where I did, because I knew that's where he was going. He's going to continue with that and talk about that energy right there in that session. So I wanted to stop there and then move forward. Wait a minute, where do I have you? Where do I have the comment here? I gotta close that comment out. Oh, there it is. My screen was tripping. Okay, so yeah, wanderers and walk-ins and are different. All walk-ins I have met know the walk-in date. Told you that they would. Yeah, I agree with you, because they'll know exactly the date that they came in. Absolutely. That's why I'd like to talk to them, because if they don't know the date, they're not a walk-in. Because if they are an actual walk-in, they'll tell you the exact date they came in and took over. And their family members will go, that person was the same, but something was different about that person from that point on. That's why I've been accused of that when there's been a shift in that I've shifted into here, and someone says, you seem to be different. I don't know. Who are you? I had people actually ask me that. Who are you? You're not the same person who was here yesterday. Actually, I am, but there was a shift in the timeline. I'm not a walk-in, but in a sense I am. But I'm not. This is the body that I was in the parallel universe. So I shifted into this one because the things have changed here. So my personality seems slightly off to you because you're not used to it. The person who was in me shifted to a different reality where he was needed, but we're the same soul. So there's a difference. A walk-in is a soul that has replaced another soul. When a wanderer shifts and there is a definitive difference in them, they'll tell you, no, I'm not a walk-in. I'm a wanderer. I just shifted. And so you have people that aren't aware that they're wanderers, that know that there's a shift going on. And those people usually go, it's got to be CERN. It's got to be those people. But I agree with Celeste. And if you talk to a walk-in, they'll tell you the exact date, the moment that they shifted, that they came in, it took over, right? Was Denise, was when you asked me to answer Cassie's question, was that's the question that she was asking about the sexual right energy, I believe. If not, then I missed it and I didn't know there was another question. Right, and Paulie said Cassie had a question. Was that the question? I'm now trying to catch up to where you guys are. Hopefully that I didn't miss it. If there was a question that I did miss, please re-ask it and I'll get down here and find out. Okay. One time a month, Celeste, when the sun, I don't know if you and I've talked about this, when the sun goes in, or when the moon cycle goes into your sun sign, like I'm a Virgo, the moon's going into my sun sign. Is it now or is it next week? I think it's next week. Let me look on my phone. There's a website that you can go to. I'm sure you know the moon cycle anyways, Celeste. Being a Wiccan, you probably know what the moon cycle is and what sun sign it's in currently. Okay. So let me look at my calendar and I'll tell you. Sunday. No. Yes. Sunday, the 29th. Today's Friday. The 29th on Sunday at 10 a.m. in the morning, the moon, unless my calendar's off by an hour because of the time change, the moon moves into Virgo. Okay. The moon will be in Virgo for 2.5 days, and then it'll go into what comes after. Virgo is what is that for October? I can't think of what it is. My stepson is in October. He's October 10th, and I forgot what that sun sign is. So the moon will go in. She says, "I'm not a Wiccan, I know, but you are you do witchy stuff, right? So you're more of a pagan, right, than a Wiccan or a druid. I don't know exactly what you would consider yourself because I know that you don't follow. You're not a religious. You're a spiritual person, right? So I don't mean to offend if I said Wiccan and you're like, I'm not a Wiccan, thank you. But I do know that you know about the Eastern philosophical religious rites. So I don't get offended if I said that. So you did have a second question. Okay, Cassie, let me finish what I'm talking about with Celeste, and then you go ahead and type it, and I'll get to that. I didn't realize you had a second question. I apologize for that. Okay. Oh, that looks like Denise said it. Want to know the difference between? Okay. So we'll go. If that's the question, I'll answer that. So let me finish. So Celeste, when the moon goes into your sun sign, your astrological sign, it goes in it for exactly 2.5 days. The story of Christ and going up the 33rd run of his age before he is crucified coincides with your vertebrae in your spine. There's 33 vertebrae in the human spine. There is an oil, it's in my book. I'll send you the video, but I'll give you the synopsis. There's an oil that is two oils that are released in your brain, one from your third eye and one from your pituitary gland. Don't quote me on that. Though one is a milky substance and one is a honey substance. They look like that. One is milky white and the other one looks like honey. And they go down the Igala and the Pingala nervous system in your endocrine system. And they go down those two nerves, and they literally go to the base of your spine, to the 7 vertebrae that are fused at the base of our spine, just above our tailbone. That is actually in the ancient times called Bethlehem. Okay. And that oil is secreted from your brain, goes down your spine and mixes together and becomes one oil, and then goes back up your spine. And this happens before that 3-day process. Okay. This happens before the moon goes into your astrological sign. It goes down and then starts coming back up. And that is a positive and a negative, a masculine and feminine, a Kundalini and Kunda buffer energy, masculine and feminine. And those two mix as to one, and that is Joseph and Mary, or God, the God particle, and Mary having the son of Jesus. And then that goes up the run of the 13 spinal column, mixing with the Kundalini energy, the knot work of the Celts, the two, masculine and feminine, Kundalini, Kunda buffer energy, spiraling up your spine, getting charged from your chakras, goes up the claustrum in your brain, hence Santa Claus, goes up the claustrum in your brain, and then is crucified in an inner space for 2.5 days while the sun or while the moon is in your sun sign, sits there for that 2.5 days. And at the end of 2.5 days, if you do not have sex, if you do not play with yourself, if you do not drink alcohol, if you do not eat crap food, you meditate for 2.5 days or 3-day time period. That is the death and crucifixion of Christ, of the Christos, the Christ oil. And at the end of that, you become the light of the world, and the oil charged with the Kundalini energy of your body and the universe will explode into your third eye and illuminate every brain cell in your head all at once. And that's Jesus becoming the light of the world. And it actually, that's Thor cracking the sky with his lightning, Mjolnir, which means lightning, cracking the sky and chasing Fenrir the wolf, moving the veil and releasing that veil, and you become illuminated and you jump up in ascension and vibration. And this is very subtle, but if you're actually paying attention at that moment when it happens, whether you're watching the clock or not, you'll go, wow, that was weird. All of a sudden I felt like I got grounded and I have like a little bit extra energy, and it releases DMT into our brain, psilocybin DMT into our brain, which we create in our own body. I talk about that in my book, and I can send you a video after the show. I'll send you a link to the video on YouTube, and you can watch it. Science knows about this. All ancient religions know about this, and they've known about it for hundreds of thousands of years, and they've known and they've talked about it in history. And at a certain point in history, they stopped teaching that to the world in all religions. They don't teach it anymore, but it's still in the books. It's still there for you to find. Jacob's ladder in the Christian Bible. It's still in all books. It's always 33 runs, 33 vertebrae. Jesus was 33 years of age. Thor was 33 years of age when he descends to hell, descends into Midgard, becomes mortal, not a god anymore, has to prove himself, and then has to save Valhalla from Surtur and Hel, his older sister who was trying to take over and kill everybody, and he has to sacrifice himself for the humans because he loves them and proves his worthiness to be able to pick up his warhammer and then go back to Valhalla and bring in this army of humans with him, going up, ascending Bifrost the Rainbow Bridge, and going to Valhalla and defending and becoming the light of the world and cracking the sky with his lightning and illuminating the world and chasing off Fenrir the wolf, the veil from the earth. It's in every culture and it's in every religion. And that's what my book, which I'm going to put up on the screen again for those of you around the world, that I just published 2 months ago. Let me put the book back up on the screen here for you to take a look at. It's called The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. On sale online worldwide currently. You can find it anywhere on the planet. Just type in The Reality About Reality, semicolon or colon, Returning to the Old Ways. My name, Leonard O'Neill. And the book tells you about that Christ oil, and all the religions of this earth were teaching it. They all knew about it, and they were all teaching it, and they all called it the Christos. Santa Claus, the story of Santa Claus. Santa Claus's first name before he became Santa Claus was Kris Kringle. Christopher means he who is the Christ. He who is like God, the Christ. Kringle is the grommet hole currently in the Viking languages that the rope goes through on a sail. That word in the ancient Viking meant the hole in the roof, the chimney. Okay, so Kris Kringle ascends to become Santa Claus. The current 3-language Viking word for a grandma or wise one or auntie is Tanta. If you watch the cartoon coming up in December of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, when he was brought to the Kringles, they called Tanta Kringle, who was a woman who came out. The masculine version of that was not in the claymation cartoon, who would be Santa. Okay, not Saint. Everyone thinks that it's Saint Claus. Santa, meaning wise one, illuminated one. So Kris Kringle becomes Santa Claus. Where does the word Klaus come from? In your brain, there is a portion of your brain called the claustrum, which is a chimney that goes in the center of your brain to your third eye. where that oil goes to when it illuminates. And if you're being good for Santa Claus, when he comes down the chimney, he will then, when he leaves and goes back up the chimney, give you a beautiful present, unless you're bad, and then he gives you coal. And physiologically, everybody on this earth 5,000 years ago, when they dissected the brain, knew that when you expended or ate from the tree of life during that time period of the oil that was crucified in your brain, what you didn't get was the illumination, and what you did get was a black coal-like substance that was released into your brain from that oil. Instead of illuminating your mind, it diminishes your capacity and lowers your vibration. You get cold. So the story of that has been around the world for thousands of years, and that book talks about that. Now let me go to the next, let me find out where I am here to find the question so this has been tuning for a while here. Let me find where this is that I have her thing up on the screen and turn that off. Okay, so Cassie, what was the question that she was asking? Cassie, please give an example of the negative and positive energy. That's the question that you had, right? Can you give the example of the negative and positive energy? Now, are you talking about the negative and the positive energy as far as the Christ oil energy, or as far as just energy in general? I don't know the context of what you're asking there. So please clarify that for me, please. Is that what it was? Let's see. Denise said, Cassie wants to know the difference between positive and negative sexual energy. Can you please? That's what I thought you were asking. Okay. Can you please answer that? Okay. Yes. So the negative energy I just talked to you about when I was talking to Celeste. So the negative energy, if you expend the energy that you have collected in that 2.5 days, when you're waiting for that energy to explode, if you have sex or you are eating crap food or you get drunk during that time period, that's called eating of the tree of life. And then you don't get the reward, you get the other reward, which is a negative reward, which is coal, the coal-like substance in your brain. And that's the negative energy that you would receive by eating of the tree of life at the wrong time. The story of Adam and Eve eating of the tree of life was originally about that same Christ oil, but they corrupted that into gaining control and telling women that they were useless, and that you have all of your period and pain and childbirth, and that you're the original sin and you're the evil one, and you're just property. And because of that, men are the strong dominant one. That was a corruption of that story, only to take control of women by the churches. That story was originally about the same thing. So but then there's a positive energy that you can use that's not during that one time period, 2.5 days. You can do the same thing and get it, because you're constantly moving that oil throughout your body. But it only expands your consciousness when everything is right, which is when the moon moves into your astrological sign, and because that oil goes up and down your body. I think we turn it over. Don't quote me on this. It's in the video. That oil goes down and up like every 5 days or something like that. It takes for it to go down and up. So that is happening to you all the time. It's in one of those guises. So if you can figure out from the time of when the illumination is going to happen to you, then you can from that go, now it'll start again tomorrow after the illumination. That oil is going to go back down, and 5 days later it's going to be here. So you can use that oil on the off days when you don't have to worry about it being illuminated. You can charge that energy and use that energy by not having sex for 4 or 5 days, and then having sex to have better sex. You just have to find what your cycle is so that you can then plot it. And if your cycle matches up with someone else, and that their cycle, which, all you have to do is go, it doesn't matter what sun sign you are. When is your illumination time? When is my illumination time? Those 2 times we don't have sex. But when is your illumination time? When is my illumination time? So we know what the cycle is, so we can then predict what would be the best day time of the day to have sex. Is it on a Friday? Is it on a Thursday? Is it on a Saturday? Do we have to wake up in the middle of the night? when is the best time? And then you can go, well, that's 2 a.m. for both of us. We're not going to do it at 2 a.m. I don't want to stay up that late on a Tuesday. But you can still then have really good sex on that Tuesday at 9 or 10 o'clock before you go to sleep. Or when you get up, say, in the morning or whatever. You can figure that out. And when you do that, you go, okay, we don't have sex for 5 days, and then we have sex. Both of us abstain, and then we have sex. It's going to be better anyways. But then if you're on that cycle where you're at the top end of the Kundalini energy, you're going to have even better sex. So once you find that out, that's in the Kama Sutra. The Hindus knew about it thousands of years ago. That's in the Kama Sutra. And then positioning, and then you find out if you're paying attention to your partner, what do they like? What do they don't like? Do they like foreplay? Do they like visuals? Do they like, you go down that road. I'm not going to be a sex therapist here, but there's a lot of that entails that you can make sex. The Japanese and the Chinese have made an art form out of it in the Kama Sutra, that the sexual energy to have really good sex. And they'll tell you that intimacy is a key. So yeah, the only time that you get the negative energy, Cassie, is if you have sex during the time of the illumination when you're supposed to be. That's the only time that you get that negative energy that releases in your brain. If you eat of the tree of life, while that that energy is built up for that 2.5 days, if you have sex in that 2.5 days, it's easier just to say, I'm not going to have sex for 3 or 4 days, right? But if you can plot it, that's why I gave you that website, so you can plot it. Know that in that time, that 3 days, don't have sex, because then all of that energy that's built up is going to go in your brain. It's not going to be this like you're going to go and like you had sex. It's not going to be that endorphin, but you're going to notice it when it happens. You're going to go, whoa, that was weird. You're going to notice that. And if you are a magic user and you ground yourself and you know what it feels like to go boom and ground, you're going to feel almost that exact feeling at that point. You're going to go, wow, I just grounded just now. Most people just do that. They don't realize that that was the cycle that they were on, and they just illuminated. You'll find that your ascension happens faster and you start getting smarter because you're now taking care of that. So that's the only time that you get negative energy from that oil that naturally goes up and down your body, is if you eat of the tree of life on your cycle of that three day time period. Once that goes in your brain, fuck away, because now you're only expending the energy. And then it's the balance of knowing when to eat of the tree of life and when not to. Once you get that down, you're going to find that you can find that routine. Ask anybody who was married to me. Okay, ask either one of my 2 wives. They're going to go, yeah, no, he's really good at that. He finds out he knows what the cycle is, and he'll go. You don't have to make an appointment, but he'll tell you. You look at him and, can we have sex now? Yeah, we can have really good sex now, right? But or no, let's wait until later tonight. Let's wait another couple of hours, or it doesn't matter except for this time. If somebody is impatient, then if you just like having sex a lot. But the only time that's negative is if you or your partner, it won't affect you, but it could affect them. So you have to kind of, unless you don't give a shit about your partner, and then just go, whatever, man, your shit's up to you. And then I'll get mine, you get yours. But if you want them to have good sex, learn their cycle as well, whether they know it or not. If they don't know it and they don't believe in it, you can still learn their cycle by just knowing when it is, what's their sun sign. You can look it up on that website that I've linked to you guys many times. Go on there and go, if I have sex with him on this day, it's going to diminish his capacity slightly. He's going to lose ground. So I got to convince him not to get drunk and not to have sex for that 3-day time period. So it's better if you just don't drink alcohol, unless you have the ability to go, I'm not drinking for 3 days, right? That's one of the strongest ones that does damage to you. That's why that's why when there was a fucking pandemic, you couldn't go to church, but you could buy alcohol. They weren't wanting people to not have alcohol, because alcohol is one of the things that keeps you in a diminished state more than anything else. That's why they call it spirits, right? Okay, I got to go. It's 6:30. I got to get off of here. But we'll talk about a day and a time to go off camera, or on camera, but not live, and have you guys on who want to talk and ask me questions, and I'll work with you guys. Cassie said that she'd be willing to do something like that as well. And know that, Cassie, if you're interested, and Celeste, if you're interested, that right now that Jacqueline Taylor is putting together the thing for December, which I don't have the picture ready for you guys, and I apologize for that. I'll put it up in the chat here after I get dinner going for my mom and I, after I get her out of the shower, which is getting later, so I needed to get this done soon. But it's the December 29th and December 30th, 2 days, and we're on the air for about 3 hours. And we're going to be, this is the, call to everybody on the planet again, global ambassadors. It's going to be the Peace Summit, where we're going to be talking about not necessarily we don't want to do readings, but we're going to be talking about things that are going to help people, like an Earth Day, but like a mini Earth Day for right after the solstice. We can't do it on the solstice because everything's too busy. So we're doing it right after, on the 29th and 30th of December. In case you guys are interested, you can go to my personal page, and I'll have that up later on. We'll also put it in the chat. And Cassie and Jacqueline Taylor has that up now, and there's a website that you guys can go to and get the information from. But I don't have that stuff up yet, but Jacqueline does. So if you're in any of the groups with Jacqueline Taylor, you know where to find her, and her information is up. She told me while I was live on air, she was one of the people texting me and said the website's now live and it's up on my page. So I'll have that up later on for you guys. So it'll be kind of cool if you guys want to tune in, and some of you out there that know me, that have worked with us in the past, that might want to come on and talk. We're not doing things where you're not going to be talking for like 30 minutes or an hour. We're going to do probably 15 to 20 minutes per person to talk. We'll let you guys talk for the whole time and then take questions, and then we'll have a panel. So we're doing a little smaller than we normally do. We normally would do something like we would do on Earth Day and do like 8 to 12 hours in the day, but we're just too busy. Her and I both are too busy to do that. So we're only going to do about 3 hours a day for those 2 days. But it's going to be, talking about, suicide prevention and stuff like that. Whichever, if you guys have anything in mind that you might want to talk about that would help people. She's working with the people from the White Buffalo Foundation. And I don't know if they've committed yet, but they might come in and speak, and we're going to have a link up for them to be able to, for people that want to look into the White Buffalo and what that means spiritually, and to help buffalo around the North American continent, to donate money to their cause. They're going to be, I don't know if they've committed, we might still give their information, but I think she was talking to them, and they were thinking about having someone come and speak and talk about that. So that'll be kind of cool if they do that, talking about the buffalo and the white buffalo. That'll be really cool, especially for you shamans out there, anybody that knows about Native Americans, talking about the white buffalo. We're hoping that they'll come and talk for a few minutes about that. If not, we'll talk about it if they let us link their site. But from what I understand, they're willing to let us link their site minimum already, and they may come have a representative pop in to talk about that. So that'd be kind of cool to talk about that part of the spirituality to the buffalo and the white buffalo. All right, guys, I love you guys. I got to go. I got to get mom in the shower and get food before it becomes 8 o'clock. So I know that she'll probably have her eat first and then get in the shower, because she doesn't look like she's worried about the shower at the second. So I got to go. I love you guys. I'll talk to you guys after I get dinner going and shower for my mom. So if I don't answer you in the chat, it's because I'm doing that. I will answer when I have time. It may not be today, it might be tomorrow, but we'll set up a time to where we can figure out to get together and do that. Rick, either way, I'll still work with you. So even if we don't get that set up, I'll still work with you in guidance in as much as I can to help you going forward. But I would love to have a setting to where I'm able to answer your guys' questions like I've been doing here, but have you guys be on screen to be able to ask the question so I don't miss it in the chat like I do here. To be able to have you go, I have a question, and then you be able to voice that, where you don't have to go, Leo, read me, right? If I don't have a producer working with me to read your guys' chat, or an assistant to read your guys' chat and actually be on camera with me to say, so-and-so has this question, then we need to transfer to doing this kind of thing in that setting so that you guys can get my attention. And I'm okay with that, because that's where I want to go with assistance and helping you guys. All right, guys, I love you guys. Have a good rest of your night, rest of your day. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. You guys have a good night, a good weekend, and I'll see you either next Friday or in a chat somewhere sometime soon.